So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas Fault line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas Fault line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tejon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis. But there's something it can cause more damage than the Big One. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas Fault line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas Fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas Fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since salt water will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas Fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put two and two together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed. But Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
You rub your eyes, trying to make sense of everything. Perfect circular holes in the bottom of the ocean floor off the coast of Big Sur in California. You have no idea how this happened, even though you're a marine biologist who's been practicing it for years. You go through some of the old records and find out that these holes have been around since the 90s. In 1999, a ship-mounted sonar conducted a survey and found 5,200 of these pockmarks, or large holes over 500 square miles, on the ocean floor. They look like moon craters underwater. You contact your team and get the robot ready to go down and explore the scene and bring back a few samples. You and the team drive to the coast and hop on the boat. You're sitting inside controlling the robot with a joystick. Your teammate sets the robot in the water and drives it down. Everything seems normal near the surface, but as the robot goes lower, the pockmarks start appearing. A bunch of boats swift past you, making you lose your balance and focus. The robot turns on the flashlight so you can see better. But as it goes lower, the resolution is less crisp. It almost reaches the bottom, and the holes are smooth and nearly perfect circular shapes. Some of these holes that were visible in the sonar reading measure more than 30 feet across and 15 feet deep. You show the rest of your teammates the images, and they're shocked. The robot continues swimming, but there appear to be more holes all around. Many of them are too small for the scanner to capture from above. These microdepressions are steep and have sort of tails going in a certain direction. It's possible that the currents underwater played a role in their shape. Everywhere the robot swims, there are new holes all around. After a couple of hours, the robot goes back to the boat with some samples. You take them back to the lab and study them. The robot clearly captures images of human trash, but the samples don't indicate anything alarming for now. Despite the fact that 1/3 of the pockets are filled with trash, there's still no explanation of how they were formed. It's late at night and the rest of your team heads back home. You're passing out in the lab, still trying to find some answers. You wake up the next day and while cooking breakfast, you get this idea that maybe these holes are gases venting out, which could be harmful to marine life. You quickly get the robot and sail out to the ocean once more. This time, you didn't even think about calling your teammates. You place the robot in the water and get behind the screen to control it. The robot descends to the bottom of the ocean and does a survey. So far, the holes still seem to be covered with trash. But some of the holes have marine life dwelling inside, like fish and seaweed. After much scanning, it doesn't look like they're producing any bubbles, which means there aren't any gases venting out, but you're determined to find them. After a while, you reach one of those large pockmarks, and the robot starts scanning around. You find some bubbles coming from a source, but the robot can't reach it. It swims around trying to find a spot, but nothing. You bring the robot back to the lab and work on it. You attach some mechanical arms on it that can lift things and move them. You bring the robot back down to the same spot, but the bubbles aren't as frequent as before. You use the arms to move some of the trash and find out that the bubbles are being produced by a group of crabs chilling next to a pile of plastic. Bingo! The bad news is, you still don't have a clue why the microdepressions and pockmarks exist. As you try to control the robot to go back to the surface, an octopus wraps its tentacles around it, pulling the robot down. You struggle with the controls and push it to maximum power, but the suctions of the octopus are too strong to break off. It's a game of tug-of-war with the octopus and your robot. It takes the robot under a pile of trash, thinking it's lunch. But you use the arms to maneuver the robot out and swim back to the surface. You go back to the lab even more confused. The robot has collected more samples for you to study. Your eye is glued to your microscope, trying to figure out what's going on, but nothing. You decide to do a carbon dating test to determine how old these holes are. After a while, you check out the results and are even more stunned than before. They show that the holes are around 400,000 years old, so it's likely that human trash wasn't the cause for all this. You pull many all-nighters trying to figure out the truth. You gather your team once more and hold a small press conference about this. You claim that this may be something we should be extremely worried about, but you still can't tell them more than what you know. With all the brain work put together, you find out that the large pockmarks haven't changed or been active for more than 50,000 years. The newer holes were most likely created by human trash settling in the bottom of the ocean floor. The marine life gathered some of this trash like plastics and discarded fishing gear and created homes for themselves. This is why around 4,500 of the holes are newer and have trash in them. But it still doesn't answer why the holes appeared in the first place. You're back to square one. The only way to see what's really going on is to clear up the trash from underwater and study them. The story makes headlines in the local community and catches the attention of a cleanup crew. You organize a trip to the ocean and begin the extraction of all the trash. Many cleanup boats arrive and everyone drops down a net to collect the trash. You send down the robot once more to make sure the nets are hitting the right spot. As most of the trash is being collected, many marine life animals scramble and try to find a way to escape. Everyone makes sure not to hurt them. After a couple of weeks, all the holes are cleared up from the trash. You do another sonar scan from the surface and can see the holes clearer than before. But you still don't have an answer for this. You do some more research trying to see if any other holes appeared around the world. On the other side of the country is a mysterious blue hole off of Florida's Gulf Coast. You catch the nearest flight to Florida and make an appointment with the scientists in charge of the expedition. Blue holes are underwater sinkholes that open below the seabed. Just like on the surface, the underwater world also has sinkholes. This one is called the Green Banana and is 150 feet below, and the hole is 435 feet deep. You dive with some special gear with the rest of the team to a barren ocean floor, and the hole is right there in front of you, looking like an oasis in the desert. You and the rest of the scientists are surprised by the diverse marine life dwelling within. Some sea turtles swim past you, and even sharks. These ones don't harm humans. Halfway through, you reach a narrow path, which makes it difficult for humans to pass through. But everyone is careful. There are corals, sponges, mollusks around the corner. You collect some samples and go back to the lab. Blue holes in general are richer in nutrients than barren lands and host plenty of unique marine life. They're quite common and don't pose any sort of threat to anyone. After making the connections, you don't think the holes off the coast of California have anything to do with blue holes. The mystery goes on.
You have friends over for dinner. You set your drink on the counter and go help your friend set out some desserts. When you get back, you notice the liquid in your cup. It's sloshing around and the ice cubes look like ships on a rough sea. Now you feel it too. On the ceiling, the chandelier is swinging like mad. Then you hear someone scream, "Earthquake!" The house and everything in it is rocking back and forth. You try to run for cover, but the shaking keeps you stuck in place, fighting to keep your balance. The cabinets look possessed, and glasses and dishes fly out and smash on the floor. The bookshelves topple over, and everything hanging on the walls sways and falls off. You duck under the dining room table, trying not to get hurt on all those broken dishes. Yeah, you've been through earthquakes before, but none like this. Checking your phone? Typical, no signal. You can't believe what's about to happen. The screams get louder, and suddenly, the whole house collapses. The biggest earthquake ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960. Disaster came in the afternoon, just when everyone was out enjoying themselves. To cause serious, life-changing damage, you need to have a magnitude of around 7 or so on the Richter scale. This one was 9.5. This part of Chile is smack dab on the so-called Ring of Fire, the most active volcanic and seismic area in the world along the Pacific Rim. The initial shaking lasted around 10 minutes, and after 2 days, many aftershocks were still strong enough to set off a volcano in the south of the country. But that's not where it ended. The earthquake unleashed a series of tidal waves all over the Pacific Ocean, with some reaching over 80 feet high. The waves in earthquake were so strong that they even affected Hawaii, Japan, and the Philippines. It caused around $500 million $1960 worth of damage. Many were left homeless. Much of their infrastructure was smashed too. Buildings as far as the eye could see were toppled, and debris piled everywhere. Scientists estimate that this earthquake was so powerful, it shifted the Earth's axis, making our days 1.26 microseconds shorter. That might not seem like a lot, but think about it. Just one natural disaster was strong enough to make time move. Many of the coastal cities were flattened and floods were widespread. The economy spiraled downward. According to studies, if this earthquake happened today, it caused more than $20 billion in damages. So what would happen if an earthquake twice that size hit without warning? For starters, you'd likely feel the effects even further away. Tidal waves wouldn't just hit the coasts of Japan and the Philippines. They would move even further to China, Korea, Vietnam, and even Australia. And those waves would be significantly higher than 80 feet, perhaps double that. That's like 8 giraffes piled on top of each other, surfing your way. If you lived by the coast, you'd notice the waves. If you saw the water recede way back so you could practically see where all the fish call home, you'd know it was time to run. Chances are that a tsunami's heading your way. Say it really happens. You're caught under the wreckage, not knowing what's going on. You manage to free yourself and escape to the fresh air. And you're not alone, because all the houses in the neighborhood have turned into piles of bricks and rubble. The bridges have also collapsed, leaving people stranded on either side. You look around, dust yourself off, and rush to find help. Fire trucks and ambulances drive between the broken-down cars and rubble. You try to make it to your car, but the aftershocks are still hitting, and you're getting tossed to the sidewalk. With all the cell towers down, you can't call anyone on your phone. Your knees are shaking, but you manage to power through. Once you reach your car, you see it crushed under a boulder, like a giant soda can. You continue on foot and eventually reach downtown. It looks as if some giant got angry and knocked all the buildings down. You push forward and try to see if you can find some help. Without warning, your phone vibrates. You check it and see 1,000 notifications about a 20-magnitude earthquake. You're still shaking, but that's all you. The ground is still for now. Uh-oh. You hear something in the distance, racing towards you. To your right, you see tidal waves as tall as buildings charging at you. Still in shock, not knowing what to do, you now come to your senses and run. You don't even know which way to go. There's a tsunami right behind you, and in front of you are broken down buildings with rocks and concrete still falling everywhere. Wait, there's a building that's somehow still standing. You need to get on top of that thing. You reach the elevator, but it's jammed. Not surprising. You bolt up the stairs as fast as you can, tripping on broken glass and plaster, but always managing to get back up. You look out a window and see the water. It's so close. You're nearly at the top. A few more flights and… whoosh. The water forces its way into the building and drags you down at least 2 floors. You can barely see anything. Still, you know you must swim up. But the water keeps forcing you downwards. After about 30 seconds, you manage to swim your way out and continue climbing to the top. You scramble to the top floor and collapse on the roof. You're safe for now. The tidal wave is still going strong, plowing its way through the ravaged city center. Your phone is now waterlogged and useless. You have a perfect 360-degree view of your town covered in water and debris. The ground starts to shake again. Maybe you'll just sit around until this is all over, waiting for the rescue helicopter. But then, a loud explosion that almost breaks your eardrums shakes the ground even more. Off in the distance, smoke is rising, and soon it covers the entire sky. Darkness hides the morning sun. That's when you can see lava shooting up into the air and landing nearby. The lava forms into a river, flowing its way into town block by block. With this much seismic movement and the high intensity of the earthquake, the world's tectonic plates have shifted so that magma is pushing its way to the surface. From the earth, steam begins to vent. Then the heat hits you. You see the magma cover the ground like a blanket, eating up every car in its way. What's worse is that the magma is melting the foundations of the buildings that managed to withstand the earthquake and the tsunami. The buildings in the distance are now sinking and collapsing into the raging lava pool that's replaced your town. One by one, every building descends. That means, uh-oh, the building where you're standing is also swaying. It's about to fail. That's when you see the light. You look up and see a helicopter above in the distance. You wave your arms, run around, jump, anything to get noticed. And it works. The chopper makes a few circles and finally drops you a rope ladder. As you're lifted in the chopper, you take a good look at the world below you as it wriggles around like noodles in a strainer. You land a few miles out and are immediately treated by a doctor in an emergency triage center. You were one of the lucky ones. A year later, the tsunami water has receded. The lava that flowed inland has cooled, but all that magma permanently changed the ground below it, and the whole town is gone. The disaster has thrown the entire country into a financial nightmare that'll last decades. It takes months to survey the town, making sure there's no dangerous electrical wires or busted gas pipes anywhere. They're rebuilding your town farther inland from where the old one was. In other towns, they rebuild directly over the ruins. In others, they just decide to move everyone to a nearby city.
If you think you're safe from violent tornadoes because you aren't living in the tornado alley, you could be dangerously wrong. It's shifting to the east. It looks like we're about to see fewer single tornado days and more days with multiple powerful tornadoes. And because they're shifting into more populated areas, they could take more lives and ruin more homes. There isn't enough time to build infrastructure to protect everyone from this fast-moving danger. So the least you can do to save yourself is learn as much as you can about it. About 1,200 tornadoes hit the US every year. You gotta thank the unique geography that sets up the perfect conditions for it, especially in spring and summer. Winds from the Pacific drop moisture over the Rockies and become dry and cool as they move east. They collide with warm, humid air streams from the Gulf of Mexico over the flat terrain. And that's how unstable air and wind shear, which are the perfect conditions for tornadoes, are born. Historically, tornadoes were most common in Tornado Alley. This term was first used in the 1950s by two meteorologists as the title for their research project to study extreme weather in Texas and Oklahoma. Northeastern Texas and south-central Oklahoma are precisely the areas we think of when we talk about Tornado Alley. But in the past 10 years or so, it has shifted eastward by up to 500 miles. Now, eastern Missouri, Arkansas, western Tennessee, Kentucky, northern Mississippi, and Alabama see more tornadoes. The storms of early 2023 are great proof that this trend is real. A violent tornado hit Rolling Fork, Mississippi, and another outbreak caused huge damage in the new Tornado Alley. Data from the past 2 years shows that large tornado outbreaks with multiple twisters from a single weather system are also moving eastward and becoming more frequent and intense. The Tornado Alley is shifting eastward mainly because of supercells. Those strong thunderstorms with rotating updrafts create new tornadoes. Supercells form when warm, humid air near the ground interacts with cool, dry air higher up. You can say that we're living in the middle of a natural experiment. We see changes in the basic ingredients for severe storms. But we don't know how significant these changes are. Experts predict that supercell storms will become more frequent in the late winter and early spring and less common in the late summer and fall. The air in recent years is getting warmer and moister, and the interactions between air masses more and more common. Experts explain that the atmosphere is becoming more unstable and the Gulf of Mexico sends more water vapor into the southeastern U.S. All these factors fuel the storms. Research also shows that the so-called dry line, which divides the wetter eastern U.S. from the drier western U.S., is shifting eastward too. This line has traditionally fallen along the 100th meridian, but has moved about 140 miles east since the late 1800s. This shift can affect where storms form, as the dry line works as a boundary for convection, where warm air rises and cold air sinks, fueling storms. Milder winters we've seen recently also mean more opportunities for unstable air masses to interact and form supercells earlier in the year. It's tricky to predict how the situation will change and how dangerous it is, because we don't have that much data on how weather patterns affect such short-lived events as tornadoes. The U.S. National Weather Service only began keeping tornado records in 1950, and they didn't catch many tornadoes in remote areas. Data shows that the number of days with tornadoes each year has decreased, but there's more tornado activity on those days when they do occur. The records also show that some years, tornadoes take the lives of up to 20 people across the U.S., and in other years, they take over 100 lives. But now, there are more people living in the paths of tornadoes because the U.S. population has more than doubled since 1950. And the Southeast, where tornado activity could go up, has way more residents now. Texas and Oklahoma are well prepared with tornado shelters, but areas in the Southeast are less equipped. Plus, there are many mobile homes in the Southeast which are vulnerable to windstorms. Tornadoes in this region often strike at night, and they are 2.5 times more likely to cause fatalities. We could possibly have more events like the 2008 Super Tuesday tornado outbreak. It hit the southern U.S. and lower Ohio Valley, and over just 15 hours, 87 tornadoes rushed through the area and caused massive trouble. 57 people lost their lives across 4 states and 18 counties, and many others were injured. The tornadoes were fueled by strong low-pressure systems that brought record warmth. There were supercells and rotating winds that produced these violent tornadoes. Early on February 5th, a squall line developed from eastern Texas to Missouri and moved east. One of the most intense tornadoes traveled 122 miles over 2 hours. By the early morning of February 6th, the severe weather threat shifted to the eastern U.S. It caused wind damage as the cold moved out to the Atlantic, with snow and freezing rain from Iowa to Quebec. It ruined many homes and even swept some of them from their foundation, made mobile homes fly, blew many vehicles and tractor trailers off Interstate 40, and threw some cars on trees. There were wind gusts over 50 miles an hour from Arkansas to Indiana, hail the size of softballs, toppled trees, and power outages everywhere. Some areas were flooded because of heavy rains and melting snow. All this led to over 1,000 flight cancellations at Chicago's O'Hare and disruptions at Toronto's airport. The data from scientists can help new areas of the U.S. prepare for more tornadoes coming their way. The people in authority will also need to improve community shelters and warning systems and educate the locals on tornado safety. You can also get prepared by learning 3 basic rules: get in, get down, and cover up. When you hear the warning for an upcoming tornado, get into the most interior room in your house and stay away from doors and windows. If you have a basement or an underground tornado shelter, hide there. If not, just be on the lowest floor possible. You can use whatever's at hand to protect yourself from debris. Clothing, pillows, blankets, a mattress, or a bulky table. Anything will do. There's a tip that says that the bathroom is the safest place to hide. It makes sense because those are mostly right in the center of homes. In March 2023, a man and his girlfriend in Rolling Fork, Mississippi survived a tornado in their bathtub. It got thrown into the air but landed safely amid the wreckage of their mobile home. But there's actually nothing extra safe about being in a bathtub with a mattress. Closets and walk-in showers that are deep inside the building can also offer good protection. Don't use elevators. You can get trapped inside if there's a power outage. Stay in your shelter until you're sure the tornado threat is over. If you can, listen for updates from the National Weather Service, local radio, or TV. Multiple tornadoes can hit the same area, so it might not be safe to leave even after one has passed. When you do leave your shelter, be very careful. There could be flooding, debris, collapsing buildings, and blocked roads. Stay away from fallen power lines and puddles with wires in them, and don't use matches or lighters in case of gas leaks. Stay away from damaged buildings as they could collapse at any time. Being in a car during a tornado isn't much safer than being out in the open or in a parking lot. Many people get injured trying to drive away from storms. Tornadoes can produce hailstones the size of softballs and can easily smash a windshield. If you find yourself outside when a tornado hits, try to get inside any building you can find. If that's not possible, get as low as you can. Even a ditch or culvert can be safer than your vehicle.
You lie down facing the scorching sun in the middle of the desert when suddenly you smell something extremely foul. You try to crawl to the source to see if maybe someone there can help you, but all you see is a large hole in the middle of nowhere. You crawl there and stick your head down the hole. You hear something really faint down there, but it's too dark to see anything. Still, the foul smell tickles your nostrils. You turn away in disgust and stand up to get a better view of it. The hole is roughly 100 feet in diameter, with nothing around it. You've been wandering around the desert for days and just ran out of food and water, but far away, you see what looks like a small hut. You walk there for another couple of hours until you reach the outskirts of a village. A local man riding a camel tells you that you're in the Al-Mara province in Yemen's eastern region, which is quite close to Oman. He immediately takes you to his mud hut, feeds you, and gives you some water. Feeling refreshed and full, you ask the local about the hole in the desert floor. His eyes sink in and his face grows pale. He grabs you by your sleeve in silence, throws you out of his hut, and slams the door shut. You try to knock on his door once more, but he ignores you. Out ahead is the village market, where you could surely get some answers from people. You head over there, and everyone starts staring at you as if you're some kind of threat. They sense something's off about you. You put on your hood and make your way to a merchant. While you purchase some food, you ask the seller about the hole, but he refuses to sell you anything. He even pushes you off to the pathway. You make your way to another vendor and ask about the hole. At first, he's reluctant to tell you anything, but after you buy a few items from his shop, he finally concedes. He takes you to a small inn and seats you down. He tells you to keep your voice low when talking about it. He then orders a beverage for you and begins explaining everything he knows about the hole. Legends have it that the well of Barhut, which is in Hadramaut, is a cursed place, a prison for spirits. He claims that any object that goes near it eventually disappears. The server comes back with 2 refreshing drinks, and the man quickly stops talking. As soon as the server leaves, he resumes telling you about the well. The reason why people were avoiding you when you mentioned the well was because it's believed that it brought bad luck to anyone who was near it. They were even able to feel it through you. The man tells you that he doesn't believe in such superstitions, but you want to find out more. At night, you head back to the well to find out if what he said was true. You sit down next to it and concentrate all your senses. It's quiet, nothing but the desert wind brushing against the sand. You hear something that sounds like a whisper coming from the hole, as if calling you to go inside. You get up from your meditation and walk towards the hole. The sound gets louder, but you still can't make anything of it. You stick your head down the hole to listen while holding your breath, but it just sounds like gibberish. The next day, you get some rope and pikes and wait till nightfall to prepare for the next step, descending down the hole. Nighttime comes again, and you set up the ropes and tie them around a tree. You climb down while holding the rope with one hand and a torch with the other, and scale down. You try to breathe through your mouth, but you start to feel like you need to catch deeper breaths the lower you go. The hole is believed to be around 850 feet deep, but you were only able to go down around 20. You didn't expect it to be that deep. You start climbing back up, but you decide to drop the torch into the hole to see how far it goes. You see the flame getting smaller and smaller as it disappears into the darkness. Maybe the man was right, just village folklore about something they can't explain. Scientists claim that the hole is millions of years old and has practically no ventilation. Even though it's been around for such a long time, it remains as mysterious today as it's always been. You're walking in Siberia, looking out for some reindeer, when suddenly you hear a loud explosion from the distance. All of your reindeer scatter around, and you're too much in a frenzy to collect them. You run to the source of the blast and find a huge crater in an area you just passed through. In August 2020, a massive hole was discovered in Siberia, Russia, being around 100 feet deep and around 65 feet wide. The local residents and researchers were stunned to find it there. This is the 9th hole documented in the region since 2013. You call the local authorities, and a huge team of scientists arrive with weird-looking scientific equipment. They claim this crater is the biggest one they've seen so far. Most of these craters were found by accident when people went on non-scientific outings by helicopter or by hunters and herders. Scientists aren't able to wrap their heads around it, but they knew exactly where to start. Permafrost, the thing that covers 2/3 of the whole country's territory. Scientists believe that by studying the permafrost, which contains certain chemicals, we can find out why these craters are popping out. Samples of the craters contain a lot of chemicals, but most notably, methane. Scientists took plenty of samples of the frozen soil from the ground and the ice. They had to descend down the crater to collect most of them. And within 2 years, these craters end up turning into lakes. According to their studies, the gases, which are mainly made up of methane, accumulate in the upper layers of the permafrost, and they can come both from the deep layers of the earth and those close to the surface. These gases end up getting trapped in the frost as they accumulate, creating enough pressure to burst through the frozen ground. They claim that these giant holes are a result of the growing temperatures. But that's just one theory. They're still not really sure how they could have formed. But because most of these craters form in remote areas of the Arctic and take years to shape, no one really talks about them. You're fast asleep in the city of Fukuoka, Japan. At around 5 a.m., you hear a loud explosion and feel the ground shake. Japan is prone to earthquakes and tsunamis, so you're prepared for the worst. But the ground isn't rumbling and the building isn't shaking anymore. You check the power, and nothing. The whole apartment and neighborhood is completely dark. You look far out from the balcony and see a huge hole in the middle of a 5-lane road. You leave the building and join the crowd gathering outside. The hole is about 65 feet deep, and it swallowed everything around it. The traffic lights, sidewalks, and a bus stop are all gone. Even parts of buildings are destroyed, leaving the support beams still standing. The whole subway system is totally dysfunctional, and about 800 households are experiencing blackouts. Even the airport and subway had a bit of it. The local authorities evacuate the entire area in case more sinkholes or gas explosions occur. A few days later, it's all fixed. It only took the Japanese engineers and contractors 48 hours to fill it up, and a week to reopen the road to the public. The explosion might have been caused by some construction on a subway line, but the sinkhole is sinking again. People noticed that the road seemed to decline by about 3 inches in heavy traffic. But with quick maintenance, Japan can fix anything in the fastest way possible.
There's an old volcano in Bolivia called Utarunu. It hasn't erupted in about 250,000 years, so you may think that's the end of its story. But recently, it has started to act a little strangely. At the moment, it resembles a zombie that's waking up from a long nap. Uh-oh, is that kind of apocalypse nearing? Utarunu is a huge mountain in the Andes that's almost 20,000 feet tall. It's called a stratovolcano, which means it's big, steep, and cone-shaped. These kinds of volcanoes are made from layers of lava, ash, and rocks. They can have terrifying, powerful, explosive eruptions because their lava is thick and traps gas inside. Think of it like a shaken-up soda that's ready to burst. Famous ones like Mount Vesuvius are just like Utarunu. And do you remember about the tragic fate of Pompeii, completely destroyed during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius? Does something similar await Bolivia? Even though Utarunu has been quiet for a long time, scientists have noticed that it's been letting out gas, rumbling with small earthquakes, and even making the ground around it bulge, kind of like it's stretching. So, people started wondering if it was getting ready to erupt again. Scientists decided to take a closer look at this situation and found out that liquid and gas moving around under the volcano is causing all this activity. It doesn't mean the volcano is definitely going to erupt, but it helps explain why it still seems alive. Let's dive into details. Since the 1990s, scientists have been using satellites and GPS to keep an eye on the ground around the Utarunu volcano. At one point, they noticed something weird. The ground was rising in the middle and sinking around the edges, kind of like a sombrero hat. The middle part has been slowly going up for at least 50 years, by about 0.4 inches a year. It doesn't sound like a lot, but hold on. This strange shape, along with lots of tiny earthquakes and gas like carbon dioxide coming out of the volcano, made scientists think that there might be a giant blob of magma growing under the mountain. If that were true, it could mean only one scary thing. The volcano could be getting ready to erupt. Utarunu sits on top of a huge underground pool of magma called the Altiplano Puna magma body. This pool is really big and really deep, stretching under parts of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Scientists thought that magma from the APMB might be rising and collecting near the surface, which could lead to an eruption. But now, after studying more than 1,700 earthquakes and checking the rocks around the volcano, scientists have a new idea. Apparently, it's not magma rising up. Instead, hot fluids and gases are traveling up from the APMB through a narrow path shaped like a chimney. These gases, like steam and CO2, can get trapped under the top of the volcano, while salty water, brine, spreads out sideways into tiny cracks in the rocks. This moving gas and water can make the ground rise and fall and cause small quakes, without any magma getting close to the surface. So the good news is, Utarunu probably isn't about to erupt. If it did happen, it would cause serious damage to nearby communities and even pose a threat to human lives. Lava flows could reach towns tens of miles away from the volcano, and volcanic ash could even spread across Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. Luckily, even though the volcano is still alive and rumbling, it's not as dangerous as scientists once thought. This discovery might help scientists figure out if other volcanoes around the world are getting ready to erupt. Now, let's visit Alaska, where according to researchers, Mount Spur might erupt soon. It's letting out strange amounts of volcanic gases from the top and side vent, the very vent that last erupted in 1992. If it erupts again, it could cause problems for airplanes flying nearby and might send ash falling from the sky. The good news is that nobody lives close to it, so people are safe for now. But even though Mount Spur isn't super dangerous, there are other volcanoes around the world that could be really destructive. One of those is Campi Flegrei, a giant volcano system near the city of Naples. Instead of one big mountain, it has 24 craters spread across the area. It last erupted in 1538, but its biggest eruption happened about 40,000 years ago. That explosion covered the whole Mediterranean region in ash and made temperatures drop by up to 16.2 degrees Fahrenheit in Eastern Europe, which led to a very cold volcanic winter. If Campi Flegrei erupted again today, it could be very dangerous. It might cover Naples and nearby places in ash, causing earthquakes and landslides, and create air pollution and acid rain. Scientists are keeping an eye on it, especially after a 4.4 magnitude earthquake shook the area in March 2025. But the good news is, there's no sign that magma is rising to the surface right now, which means an eruption isn't expected soon. Still, since Italy has a lot of volcanic activity, experts continue to watch it carefully. Mount Vesuvius is also in Italy and is one of the most famous volcanoes in the world. It's known for its huge eruption in 79 CE that buried the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. The last time the volcano erupted was in 1944. Today, Vesuvius is even more dangerous because over 3 million people live near it. Around 700,000 people are living illegally right on its slopes, which puts them even more at risk. If the volcano erupts again, it could send rocks and ash flying through the air at nearly 100 miles per hour and cause major destruction, possibly even wiping out Naples. And still, scientists believe a big eruption from Vesuvius probably won't happen for a few hundred more years. But since it's still an active volcano, researchers continue to monitor it. Cumbre Vieja is a volcano on the island of La Palma, which is part of the Canary Islands. It last erupted in 2021. During that eruption, lava poured out of the volcano and flowed all the way to the sea. It destroyed over 3,000 homes, but luckily, thousands of people were safely evacuated, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. In the past, scientists were worried that a huge eruption could cause the entire western side of the volcano to break off and crash into the ocean. This could create a mega tsunami, sending massive waves hundreds of feet high across the Atlantic Ocean. But more recent studies have shown that this is very unlikely to happen. Mount St. Helens is a volcano in Washington State in the United States. It had a massive eruption in May 1980 that ended the lives of 57 people. That eruption also caused the biggest landslide ever recorded. Hot, pressurized magma exploded from the volcano, shooting ash 15 miles into the sky. Ash covered a huge area, and around 230 square miles of land was destroyed. Mount St. Helens is still active and is expected to erupt again someday, possibly even in our lifetimes. But experts say it's not likely to have another huge sideways blast like the one in 1980, thanks to a deep crater that is now formed at the top. It will change the way the volcano might erupt. Popocatépetl is a big, active volcano in Mexico. It's been slowly erupting on and off since the early 2000s. It's really close to a lot of people, just 40 miles from the Mexico City metropolitan area, which has about 22 million people, and 30 miles from Puebla, which is home to about 6 million inhabitants. If Popocatépetl had a huge eruption, it could cover Mexico City in thick ash as much as 8 inches deep. That ash could block drains, mess up the water, and even stop the electricity from working. Even worse, fast-moving lava and super hot flows, called pyroclastic flows, could rush down the mountain and destroy towns nearby. The volcano was quiet for 50 years, but now it rumbles and shakes pretty often. There have been over a dozen small eruptions, including some as recent as February 2024. Some nearby places got covered in ash, but scientists say this isn't too surprising, and they're keeping a close eye on it.
Once upon a time, a young boy was digging a ginormous hole on the beach. But then, disaster struck! The hole caved in, and he found himself stuck up to his neck in the sand like a human popsicle. Thankfully, his parents were able to keep the sand out of his mouth. Emergency services swooped into the beach soon after. After some effort, the boy was taken out. Experts say sand is tricky and can be super unstable when messed with. So, the moral of the story is, go ahead and have fun on the beach. But if you're planning on digging a hole big enough to fit your entire body, be mindful of the size and location. It turns out that this is not a one-time incident. Making deep holes can lead to serious injuries, or even worse. According to a study, there have been over 50 incidents of sand hole collapses worldwide, with many of them resulting in fatalities. We don't want to be the next headline for a preventable tragedy. So, here are some helpful tips from experts to keep you safe and sound. Never dig a hole deeper than the knee level of the smallest person in your group, and always fill in any hole you make before you leave, day or night. Lastly, avoid digging near the dune line or water line where emergency vehicles travel. Since we started with holes on the beach, we might as well continue with sinkholes. Sinkholes, also known as snake holes or swallow holes, are like chameleons on Earth's surface. They can be big, they can be small, and they can pop up seemingly out of nowhere. It's like playing a game of whack-a-mole, but instead of moles, it's sinkholes. These sneaky things form over the years. They require specific conditions and processes. So, what's the deal with sinkholes? Well, they're basically natural depressions or holes in Earth's surface caused by karst processes. And what are karst processes, you may ask? They occur when bedrocks are soluble. It's as if rocks have a secret weakness, and water is their kryptonite. Now, even though sinkholes form slowly, they're like that one friend who's always full of surprises. They can be unpredictable and show up when you least expect them. Interesting fact time. This giant pit is over 2,165 feet deep. It's the biggest and deepest sinkhole in the world. Some researchers think a meteorite might have caused it, but others believe it formed over the course of 128,000 years as underground rivers eroded the surrounding limestone. Either way, it's pretty mind-boggling. The locals have known about it for ages, but it wasn't until 1994 that the rest of the world learned about it thanks to a group of British explorers. This massive hole is home to over 1,200 plant and animal species, including rare ones like the ginkgo tree and the clouded leopard. A waterfall cascades into the pit in the rainy season, feeding an underground river and cave system below. It's like a whole other world out there. Next, we have hailstorms. Think of them as nature's way of saying, "Heads up!" in the most intense way possible. Hail is like frozen rain on steroids, and when it starts pelting down, you better take cover. Hailstorms typically last for about 15 minutes, but in that short time, they can cause serious damage to buildings, cars, and crops. They can even knock out power lines and bring down trees. And if you're unlucky to be caught out in the open during a hailstorm, you might find yourself feeling like a human pinball. Here are some of the things that make hailstorms a real bummer. Watch out, planes. If you think turbulence is bad, wait until you encounter a hailstorm in the air. A plane crashed during a hailstorm in northern Mexico in 2018. Thankfully, everyone on board made it out safely. Phew! Hail is not just a danger to airplanes, but also to cars on the road. Imagine driving down the highway and then boom! Your windshield shatters into tiny pieces. You can barely see where you're going, and the road is slippery. Farmers have it rough during a hailstorm too. Those strong winds and giant ice pellets can destroy crops, leaving behind a trail of broken plants and stripped bark. All that hard work goes down the drain in a matter of minutes, leading to significant losses. What if it's summertime? Who doesn't love soaking up the sun, playing in the sand, and catching some waves? Oops, rip currents. Those powerful, narrow channels of fast-moving water are everywhere along the east, Gulf, and west coasts, and the Great Lakes shores. They can move at speeds of up to 8 feet per second. People who panic in rip currents often try to swim straight back to shore, which is the wrong move and could tire you out, or even worse. So, what should you do if you get caught in a rip current? First, stay calm and don't fight it. Instead, swim parallel to the shore and then back to land at an angle. A little clarification. Rip currents and rip tides are not the same thing. Rip tides are a specific type of current that happens when tidal water moves quickly through places like inlets and harbors. Landslides are another type of danger that can catch you off guard. Mountains look like they are stable, rock-solid things that have been around forever. But don't let appearances fool you. Landslides can happen anywhere, at any time. Basically, landslides happen when a big pile of dirt, rocks, and other debris gets all shaken up and starts tumbling down a hill. Sometimes it's because of rain. Sometimes it's because of something like an earthquake. And sometimes it's just because the ground decides it's had enough. Mother Nature's got some more tricks up her sleeve. First up, we've got heat bursts. This weather phenomenon is hotter than a jalapeno. Now, these aren't your everyday thunderstorms. For a heat burst to occur, the atmospheric conditions have to be very specific. We need dry air, high altitude descents, and an absence of evaporated precipitation. When all these factors come together, the result is a heat burst that can reach speeds so fast that you'll feel like you're riding a rocket to the sun. And not only is the air scorching hot, but it's also so dry that it evaporates moisture right out of anything it touches, including poor defenseless vegetation. Have you ever heard of a fire whirl, also known as a fire devil or fire tornado? It's like a swirling vortex of fire and ash that can eat up debris and combustible gases. Think of it as a mini tornado that's fueled by a raging fire. These things usually start with a swirl of wind, which you can see thanks to all the smoke. They happen when rising heat and windy conditions team up to create whirling eddies of air. These eddies can sometimes get so intense that they form a tornado-like vortex that's hungry for anything and everything in its path. Now, sometimes people call a fire whirl by its other names, like firenado, fire swirl, or fire twister. But those terms usually refer to a different thing, where a fire is so intense that it creates an actual tornado. Fire whirls are a little different because their vortex doesn't usually go from the ground all the way up to the clouds. And even if they do, they're not usually considered a classic tornado because they don't form in the same way. These things can get pretty hot too. We're talking up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Fire whirls are more likely to happen during wildfires or firestorms when there's enough wind to create big vortices. The biggest ones can be massive. They can even uproot trees that are 49 feet tall or more. There you have 7 sneaky natural phenomena. Have you ever encountered any of these? Comment below and let us know.
It was June 1928 when Mr. Keller almost lost his life in a terrifying natural disaster. He was outside with his family when he noticed an umbrella-shaped cloud that seemed to be approaching them. It gave him a sense of foreboding. A tornado was probably forming there. Indeed, in no time, 3 huge funnel clouds were dashing their way. After rushing his family into the storm cellar, Keller decided to have another look. And what he saw both terrified and mesmerized him. The twister was directly overhead, but inside the swirling cloud, everything was eerily still. The man could feel a strong, grassy smell. He had trouble breathing. He looked up and saw a circular opening right overhead. It was around 50 to 100 feet across and around half a mile high. Keller could clearly see the walls of the rotating cloud. Constant bursts of lightning zigzagged from side to side non-stop, illuminating this horror movie scene. The man could also see many smaller tornadoes forming and breaking free. A deafening, hissing noise was overwhelming. And the next moment, the tornado skipped over Keller's house and smashed the home of his neighbors. Mr. Keller wasn't the only person to see the tornado from the inside and live to tell the tale. But other survivors didn't end up as unscathed. It seemed to be a regular day when Chris Tuving from Dallas, Texas got to the Little Caesars in 2019. They had run out of pizzas, so he decided to wait. Well, it was a grave mistake. A powerful tornado hit the shopping mall where he was staying and pulled him out of the building. Chris managed to find a support column and held on for dear life. But no muscle strength could compare to the terrifying power of the tornado. Tuvang was lifted into the air and thrown into a truck parked in front of the restaurant. He tried to hold on to the hood, but there was nothing to grab. In the end, he managed to hold on to the rim of the left front tire and stay there until the whole nightmare stopped. The tornado Chris survived had sustained winds of 140 miles per hour and was 13 football fields wide at the base. Eric Simmons recalled taking cover from a tornado in May 2019 by climbing into his truck. Once inside, he looked out of his right windshield and saw vines growing along the fence. They were moving around in a bizarre way that confused the man. And then it all started. Suddenly, everything Eric could see was wind and pitch-black darkness. Then, a section of a roof flew over him and shredded apart mid-air. The truck's back windshield shattered, showering the man with shards of glass. A tree in front of him was lifted into the air like a twig, and the fence blew over the top of the truck. Simmons could feel the back of the vehicle lifting. He could see the power lines exploding right in front of his eyes. Even though the visibility was terrible, he could still see the flashes. It all lasted around 45 seconds, but to him, an eternity seemed to have passed. When the coast grew clear, Eric got out of the car, but he could barely walk after the shock he had lived through. He couldn't speak. It was one of the most horrifying and traumatic experiences of his life. According to the man, the real reason why he was so terrified was because he had no training, no warning, and no defense against whatever was coming. Later, he found out that the tornado had almost taken his life at a speed of 86 to 110 miles per hour and was around 75 to 100 yards across. A tornado is a rotating column of air that touches the ground. Sometimes it's connected to the base of a thunderstorm. The wind speeds inside tornadoes can top hundreds of miles an hour. No wonder they have enormously devastating potential, picking up objects, unrooting trees, destroying buildings, you name it. The problem with escaping a tornado is that it's not always easy to see. The wind, however severe it is invisible. The first sign of an approaching tornado might be the infamous rumble resembling the noise a moving freight train produces. There are also some other sounds indicating that a tornado is coming, but the human ear can't perceive those. When you spot that classic tornado cone, it means it has already developed a condensation funnel made of water, dust, and debris. The most destructive tornadoes are born from rotating thunderstorms, called supercells. Luckily, those are something meteorologists can actually notice because such storms have a well-defined appearance on radars. Experts believe that the difference in the temperature of such a storm can determine how likely a tornado is to form. And still, there's a lot we don't know about this process. For example, the question about why and where tornadoes are most likely to appear remains unanswered. The strength of tornadoes is measured with the enhanced Fujita scale. The rating goes from 0 to 5, considering the damage caused by a tornado and its wind speeds, where EF0 is the weakest tornado and EF5 is a tornado I hope you will never ever come across. The EF scale rounds off at wind speeds of 318 miles per hour, with strong frame houses being lifted off foundations and carried long distances to be eventually broken into pieces. Cars fly through the air for more than 328 feet away, and steel-reinforced structures are left badly damaged. Despite this terrifying power and ferocity of tornadoes, authorities report that even the worst of them have a 99% survival rate. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take all possible precautions to avoid ending up inside one. Stay away from doors and windows. Move to an interior room if possible, and use pillows, blankets, and mattresses to protect yourself from flying debris. If stranded outside during a tornado, crawl into a ditch and cover yourself, protecting the head. Now there's another twister that is as scary as a tornado, but this one forms in the water. Whirlpools appear when fast-flowing water crashes into an obstacle or another current. The water starts swirling in a downward spiral, creating a vortex that can pull objects, animals, and even small boats that happen to be nearby to the bottom. One more way for a whirlpool to form is the sudden appearance of a sinkhole created by a collapsed cave, for example. This makes water flood the hollow structure and creates a whirlpool similar to the one you see when you pull the plug out of a bath filled with water. While some whirlpools are small and brief, others can reach enormous sizes and be driven by constant currents. The most dangerous of them are maelstroms. If you get into a whirlpool like that, your chances to get back to the surface are slim. The incessant movement of the water and its pulling power can leave you disoriented and stuck without air. That's what happened to Stuart Foulstone when he got trapped in a whirlpool. His first instinct was to swim out of it, but this idea proved to be hopeless. The footage filmed by the cameraman attached to his helmet later showed that the man had been underwater for almost 3.5 minutes. He had probably been dragged all the way down to the riverbed. There, the pull of the twister lessened a bit and finally released its hold. The guy was lucky to get spotted face down in the water and pulled to the surface by a kayaker. The depth a whirlpool can pull you down to can vary. It depends on its power and size. Sadly, not everyone who got trapped in a whirlpool survived and got out again. In different ways in which whirlpools form means that sometimes they can appear out of the blue. You can't predict this process and get no warning. So the best way to stay safe is to wear your life jacket at all times when in the water. If you get pulled into a whirlpool, try not to move in the same direction as the water flow. Aim for the outer edge rather than the center of the twister. If you're lucky, the whirlpool might throw you back up. There have been precedents. And if you come over a whirlpool in a boat or kayak, do your best to stop the boat from filling with water.
Well, we've been miscalling Uranus all this time. Actually, astronomers say we should be pronouncing it like Uranus, not Uranus. I can't say a different stress changes much, though. However, things could have been different. Initially, Uranus was supposed to have the majestic king-like name of George, because astronomers wanted to name it after King George III. In the end, they changed their minds, and now, well, it's the punchline of every joke. If you take the total cost of launching a mission and divide it by the weight of the cargo, you'll see some pretty mind-blowing figures. According to specialists, back in 2016, it used to cost $10,000 to send just 1 pound of cargo into space. But now, prices have gone through the roof. Cygnus spacecraft's cargo costs over $43,000 per pound, while SpaceX's new carriers come in at around $27,000 per pound. Remember how hard it is to pay $5 for water at airports? Now, a bottle of water in space would cost somewhere between $9,000 and $43,000, and that's only to have it delivered in space. Now, as for water in space, well, it used to be considered a super rare thing. But in reality, there's water ice all over our solar system, so you don't have to buy those overpriced $43K water bottles. It's hanging out there in comets, asteroids, and even in hard-to-see craters on Mercury and the Moon. We're not sure if there's enough water in these places to support colonies of people, though. Mars also has ice at its poles, hiding under the surface dust and frost. Even smaller celestial bodies, like Saturn's moon Enceladus and dwarf planet Ceres, have ice. NASA scientists think there might be a chance of finding life on Jupiter's moon Europa. There might be liquid water beneath its icy shell. Europa, even though it's a lot smaller than Earth, might have an ocean deep enough to hold twice as much water as all the oceans on our planet combined. In 2009, scientists exploring a massive cloud of dust and gas in the center of our galaxy stumbled upon a fascinating surprise. They found ethyl formate within the cloud. This chemical is responsible for the delightful flavor of raspberries and has a rum-like scent. Furthermore, another nearby region is brimming with ethyl alcohol, the same type found in many beverages. In fact, there is enough alcohol in this region to provide every person on Earth with 300,000 pints of beer every day for the next billion years. Now, believe it or not, we do have a black hole on Earth. The thing is, creating an in-lab black hole was a sort of indispensable thing to do. Studying black holes in real space remains a distant dream, so it was only possible to create one to experiment with in a lab. A group of scientists in the Netherlands wanted to explore the mysterious Hawking radiation theory proposed by the iconic Stephen Hawking. Using atoms to mimic an event horizon, they orchestrated electrons, causing a surge in temperature that resembled flat spacetime. As particles moved through quantum fluctuations, a ring of infrared radiation appeared around the lab-grown black hole, mirroring Hawking's idea. So, if you totally understood what I just said, could you please explain it to me? Now, it may sound insane, but you can totally be allergic to the moon. Long story short, it was the final Apollo mission, and they brought back more rock samples than ever before. Plus, they had the first and only pro-scientist on the moon, Jack Schmitt. He was a geologist, and his rock samples helped scientists learn more about the moon's magnetic field and volcanic history. During the expeditions, it became evident that Jack Schmitt was allergic to moon dust. The gritty, sticky powder clung to his suit and his skin, causing irritation in his sinuses, nose, eyes, and throat for a couple of hours after he took his helmet off. Meanwhile, neutron stars are extremely dense, being basically just a bunch of neutrons squished into a super small space. If you had just a teaspoonful of this stuff, it would weigh more than the entire human population combined. And to match the density of a neutron star, we'd all have to squeeze into the space the size of a sugar cube. No thanks. When it comes to outer space, we tend to think that Earth and the Moon are pretty close together. But in reality, you can actually squeeze all the other planets of our solar system between Earth and the Moon. The average distance between them is about 240,000 miles. If you added up the diameters of the 7 planets, you'd still have some room to spare, about 5,000 miles. In 2011, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery of a massive reservoir of water in space. This water, equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in Earth's oceans, could provide each person on our planet with a planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. This reservoir was located near a massive black hole drawing in matter and emitting energy, known as a quasar. The water was formed by energy waves colliding hydrogen and oxygen atoms together, and it was found around 12 billion light-years away. So, when the Curiosity Mars rover snapped its very first sunset picture in 2015, scientists were practically doing backflips from excitement. Turns out, sunsets on the red planet are anything but red. They're actually a stunning shade of blue. According to NASA, the reason behind this phenomenon is that the dust in Mars' atmosphere is like a magical filter that lets blue light shine through while blocking out those warm tones like yellow, orange, and red. Well, Venus is a slow spinner compared to Earth. It takes this planet 243 days to make a full rotation, and it spins in the opposite direction. But even though Venus takes longer to spin around, it zooms around the Sun in just 225 days because it's located so close. So, believe it or not, a year on Venus is actually shorter than its day. So, you might think that the night sky should be full of stars with no dark spaces at all. This idea is known as Olbers' paradox, named after German astronomer Heinrich Wilhelm Olbers. He thought that if the universe was infinite, unchanging, and timeless, then we should see stars everywhere we look. But it turns out that the universe is not infinite, unchanging, or timeless. Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is actually expanding, and the leftover radiation from the Big Bang tells us that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. Think of all the birthday candles. Ooh! So, the reason we don't see stars in every direction is because some stars are just too far away, or they haven't been around long enough for their light to travel all the way to us. During the Apollo 16 lunar mission, Ken Mattingly, the command module pilot, had a bit of a scare when he realized his wedding ring was missing. The whole crew frantically searched the spacecraft for it, but no luck. Finally, on day 9, while Mattingly was on a spacewalk, the ring was spotted floating out the hatch door. Charles Duke Jr. tried to grab it but missed. Luckily, it bounced off Mattingly's helmet into Duke's hands. It's cool they found the ring, but there are many other things people left up there. There's even a toothbrush floating around somewhere. Mercury is already the tiniest planet in our solar system, not counting Pluto, of course, and the second densest after Earth. And believe it or not, it's actually shrinking and getting denser. For a long time, scientists thought Earth was the only planet with tectonic activity. But that all changed when the Messenger spacecraft flew by Mercury, giving us a detailed scan of the whole planet. In 2016, Messenger discovered these cool cliff-like formations called fault scarps. Since they're still relatively small, scientists think they're pretty new, suggesting that Mercury is still contracting 4.5 billion years after the solar system began. And around 10 years ago, Australian astronaut Luca Parmitano went through a near-drowning experience during his spacewalk due to a water leak that went unaddressed. Nobody knew how it happened and why Luca ended up having water in his helmet. NASA was investigating the issue for months, but they were unable to determine the exact cause of the water entering Luca's helmet. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. Alright, just listen up. The Guinness World Records Award for the deepest human invasion into the Earth's crust goes to the Kola Superdeep Borehole. Ooh. Its depth is 7.4 miles. You can find it in the icy part of Russia where the winter temperature of minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit is a common thing. Well, that's chilling. Local scientists started to dig it in the 1970s. The grand plan was to reach a depth of 9.3 miles. It was a purely scientific project to study the Earth's crust and maybe get to the hot mantle. Well, when it's so cold outside, it kind of makes sense. Up to the depth of 4.3 miles, the drill easily coped with granite rock. Then, denser layers came and broke the drill. The scientists had to change the drilling pattern. In the end, it resembled a tree with many branches. The deeper it went, the hotter it became. The temperature went up to 350 degrees. The equipment was constantly out of order and work was stopped completely in 1992. If you see this legendary place with your own eyes, you'd hardly realize there's an abyss right beneath your feet. The borehole looks like a rather small and unambitious hole in the ground. The place is now abandoned, overgrown with moss and rust. It has its fair share of myths surrounding it too. One of them says people hear strange sounds like moans and screams from the depths. In reality, of course, none of this is true. At the time, many countries were engaged in the study of the Earth's crust. For example, Germany. They duly noted the experience of the Kola borehole and made a super tech drill that could withstand extreme temperatures. A location was chosen in Bavaria at the junction of two tectonic plates. In the past, they were the shores of an ancient ocean. In the early 90s, a group of researchers began drilling a well there. But already at a depth of 4 miles, the Earth fought back. It deflected the drill from the vertical, and then the temperature made a surprise spike to 520 degrees. All these problems forced scientists to stop at a depth of 5.6 miles. In 1977, a company in Austria started drilling a well at a site with plentiful resources, or so they thought. They did find large gas reserves, but there was an unexpected problem. As the drill entered the chamber, the well collapsed. They tried again and made a new, even bigger borehole that went as deep as 5.3 miles. But ironically, they weren't able to drill into the gas chamber again. In Sweden, expectations from drilling weren't met either. At the site of a huge crater 30 miles in diameter, they started the search for gas and oil. It's the largest crater in Europe, which must have appeared because of a meteorite. The well went deep, but unfortunately, nothing of interest was found. At 4 miles down, the drilling stopped. One of the deepest oil wells in the world is Bertha Rogers in Oklahoma. Its depth is almost 6 miles. In 1974, the Lone Star Company achieved such a stunning result in just over 500 days. For 5 years, it was the deepest borehole in the world, until the Kola Super Deep was drilled. Bertha Rogers could probably have gone even deeper, but the drill suddenly struck a molten sulfur deposit. It grew solid around the drill string, breaking the rig. If you can't get to the Earth's mantle from the ground, do it from the water. Project Mohole was just about that. It got its name from moho, the threshold between crust and mantle, and, well, a hole. You know, moho. Well, anyway, the project was launched in the 1960s and was overseen by the U.S. National Science Foundation. The crust on the ocean floor is thinner than on land, and the mantle is closer. Scientists had hoped that a 3-mile deep underwater borehole would bring them there. They chose a location in the Pacific Ocean, where the bottom was at a depth of about 2 miles. There were 2 phases planned for the project, and the first was a success. A total of 5 wells were drilled, each not exceeding 600 feet in depth. Unfortunately, the second phase never happened. Too many problems were involved. So, apparently, there ain't no moho, holes. Today, underwater wells are commonplace. Their main purpose is extraction of oil and gas. The EVA 4000 American drilling platform is located in the Gulf of Mexico. This huge structure rises above the water at a height of a 20-story building. The platform moves around looking for oil at depths of over 6,000 feet, and when it finds a good spot, it's capable of drilling up to 6 miles into the seabed. Now, let's move to Africa. Here at the very south of the continent, there's a huge quarry, the Kimberley Diamond Mine. Now, it's easy to drill through the ground when you have the best equipment, but this hole was literally dug by hand. About 50,000 workers dug it tirelessly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries using ordinary shovels. And no, they hardly wanted to get to the opposite side of the earth. They were attracted by the enchanting brilliance of diamonds. One of the most famous precious stones, Tiffany, weighing 128.5 carats, was found in the Kimberley mine. The depth of the hole reached 790 feet. Just imagine how difficult it was to return from work. It was like climbing 66 floors on foot. When the work stopped, the bottom of the pit was partially filled with soil, and then water flooded the place. Today, it's a popular sight among tourists, and surely, each of them secretly hopes to find a diamond there. With the industrial boom, oil became even more popular than diamonds, and the oil wells around the world are getting deeper. For example, in 2008, Qatar drilled the longest oil well at that time, El Shaheen. It was 7.6 miles long, and it only took them a little over a month. The vertical part of the shaft reaches 6.7 miles. Stretched up instead of down, the shaft would reach the height of commercial airplane flights. The record was broken in 2012 by the Z44 Shavo oil well. When they measured its length, the new hole beat the one in Qatar by about 300 feet. Just for a clearer picture, either of these two oil wells would fit almost 15 Burj Khalifas or 40 Eiffel Towers. Moving on to Canada and high up into the sky to look at it from space. See those two huge holes? If you don't know, those are diamond mining sites. You might think that an alien invasion happened while you slept right through. This enormous place is on the island of Lac de Gras, not far from the Arctic Circle. This is a whole city with industrial and administrative buildings, a boiler house, living quarters for workers, and even an airstrip. In 2018, the largest diamond in North America was found here. It weighed 552 carats. Apart from diamonds and oil, the bowels of the earth have a lot of other useful stuff. One example is copper. Let's go to Utah and see the giant Bingham Canyon mine. Copper has been mined here for over a century. The width of this quarry reaches 2.5 miles, and it goes half a mile down. Just imagine how breathtaking a paragliding flight would be over this powerful structure. But the greatest treasure of the planet is, of course, fresh water. And to get to it, people would dig as deep as they have to. The deepest water well in the world is found in Great Britain. It was dug by hand in the 19th century. People just had to keep on digging because they couldn't get to water, and as a result, they reached almost 1,300 feet. When the water finally gushed from under the ground, the workers barely managed to escape from the well. Many of us spend a huge part of our life under the ground. Yeah, I mean the subway. The deepest underground station in the world is in Kyiv, Ukraine. It takes over 5 minutes for the escalator to lower you to the platform. After all, you're traveling nearly 350 feet down. Sometimes nature decides to dig something deep on its own. Most likely, the Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the ocean. Its bottom, called the Challenger Deep, is 6.8 miles below sea level. Sunlight never gets there. The pressure down below is more than 1,000 times higher than on the surface. If you decide to dive to the bottom, you'll spend 4 hours of your time and a whole lot of money on the necessary equipment. Scientists have even found mountains there. By the way, if Everest was moved to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, we wouldn't be able to see its top on the surface. A little riddle: can you dig water? The answer is yes, if it's in the form of ice. The Utarunu Observatory in Antarctica made it by digging boreholes up to 1.5 miles deep using hot water. Optical detector filaments pass through them. They capture elementary particles, neurons. In fact, this is a telescope that's directed not upwards but downwards into the ice. But that's a completely different story. Now get a load of this. A red whirlwind sweeps along the coast of Australia and heads toward the nearest city. This tornado is unique not by its color, but by what is hidden inside it. These are great white sharks, hammerhead sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks. Shark! They fly inside the hurricane, snapping their jaws and trying to grab a piece of meat. People who look at this bizarre phenomenon from the outside think that they've got something in their drinks. But this is reality. A shark tornado can really exist? Or not? Yeah, let's find out. In 1877, a rather unusual tornado struck a farm in Southern California. About 6 small alligators, about 1 foot in length, fell from the sky that day. In 1894, a tornado traveled through England and dropped poisonous jellyfish on people. There's a version that tadpoles instead of jellyfish fell on the ground that day, but it still sounds quite strange. In Kentucky in 1876, there was a black humor rain. Doesn't sound funny to me. Pieces of meat fell from the sky. The locals tasted them and said it was like mutton or venison. However, later, birds discovered that a flock of buzzards had flown over that area. The birds felt unwell and regurgitated their lunch right in the air. And then, I assume, so did the locals who tried it. In 1947, fish fell from the sky in Marksville, Louisiana. In 2005, there was a rain that contained thousands of frogs in Serbia. In 2010, a small town in Australia was hit by a rain of perches, fish. And now, imagine that all these strange phenomena were caused by one villainous corporation where evil geniuses work, and one of them is you. So, you decide to make the most incredible natural cataclysm in history, a tornado of sharks, or Sharknado. It seems like it's impossible, but you're going to try, because you have nothing better to do. So first, we need to understand what a waterspout is. It's a column of rotating air filled with clouds. This vortex occurs during a thunderstorm when warm air releases a large amount of heat. This heat becomes the energy that moves the rising air currents. This warm, moist air goes up, and cold, dry air descends. The difference in temperatures preserves instability and helps tornadoes develop. When it forms over the water, a tornado becomes a waterspout. It can draw in particles of seawater, some objects, and even fish. But everything depends on the strength of this vortex. You've probably seen it when tornadoes lifted cars into the air or tore the roofs off of buildings. There's a video on the internet where a tornado raises cows into the air, and an ordinary cow weighs about 1,400 pounds. Ooh. Now, in comparison, the great white shark is about 4,400 pounds. If a tornado could lift several cows, it could cope with a shark. But besides the great white one, there are tiger sharks, bull sharks, and hammerhead sharks. All of them weigh less. Therefore, there's no doubt that a tornado could possibly lift them into the air too. Okay, now we can assume it's in the realm of possibilities. The next step is to create a real tornado. To do this, you need to heat the air and then make it rotate. The cold air will start to go down and you will get a whirlwind. One engineer from Canada named Lewis built devices that created tornadoes. He made several prototypes before assembling a real vortex engine. According to him, anyone can do it. However, these vortices were small. His device created thin jets of air that swirled and produced mini tornadoes, which then quickly dissipated due to strong winds. Lewis started developing this idea to get a new source of electricity, but he needed to create a giant vortex that would go into the sky to power several houses. He didn't have enough finances and opportunities to do this, but the place where you work has enough money to do it. You take the concept of the vortex engine and invest several $1 million. You build several large turbines that direct air to one point and then heat it with the help of a powerful generator. To give your tornado more destructive power, you electrify the atmosphere. You can control the tornado and change its direction using a special control panel. You little evil mad scientist, you. So you come to the coast of Australia, where there are many sharks of different species. To force them to gather in one place, you must throw several tons of minced meat into the water near the shore. Let me suggest that you don't do this by hand. The sharks immediately come there as soon as they smell the food. But there's a problem. These animals feel changes in the weather and don't approach the center of the storm. Therefore, to make sharks take risks, you need to make them angry and hungry enough. You go, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. You spend millions of dollars to organize large-scale fishing. You throw huge nets into the water, and within a week, catch all the fish, shellfish, and other marine life that can become dinner for sharks. You move all the prey into giant aquariums and wait for the sharks to get hungry. A few days later, you notice many big fish congregating near the shore, looking for food. Then, you buy a couple of tons of ground beef from several butcher shops. You put it in a large container and lift it with the help of a helicopter. You dump the meat in a place where you see a lot of sharks. Lunch attracts fish within a 1-mile radius. At this moment, a large ship with the tornado generator approaches the shore. Hey, can't quit now, right? You start the engines and strong flows of warm air accumulate in the sky. Electricity flashes and condensation creates rain. A powerful vortex begins to form in the sky. You control it and direct it towards the sharks. The whirlwind pulls pieces of ground beef from the water. The dust particles mix with the meat and the tornado turns red. Oh, I think I'm gonna barf. You increase the strength of the wind and see how the sharks begin to rise into the air. More precisely, they jump out of the water to grab the meat and the tornado picks them up. When several sharks are inside the vortex, you direct them toward the shore. People are running in horror. Some sharks fall back into the water and some fall to the beach. The hammerhead shark falls right into the kitchen of a coastal restaurant and eats the whole menu. The shark is also a pig. You direct the sharknado into the city. The storm lifts trees and cars into the air and rips off the roofs of houses. Some sharks fall down to the streets. People are running in different directions. The shark vortex passes through the city, scattering sharks. Of course, sharks don't crawl on the ground and don't try to eat people. They're just in shock and don't understand what's going on. Hey, what can I say? It's a PG sharknado. Even in the ocean, sharks don't like to bite people. All attacks occur because sharks mistake them for seals or other sea creatures, which all look like food. Also, toothy fish can swim up to people out of curiosity. And now they're disoriented and having big breathing problems. Fish need a constant flow of water passing through their oxygen-extracting gills. Depending on the species, sharks can last without water for several minutes to an hour. At this moment, you realize that you have carried out not a villainous plan, but a stupid thing that has caused so many fish to suffer. Now, you need to fix everything. You have several helicopters that can transport the fish back into the ocean, but they're twitching and snapping their jaws in fear. Therefore, to calm them down, you use darts with sedatives. Then you help rescuers to fasten the sharks to the helicopters and lift them into the air. You have to get one fish out of an apartment on the 7th floor. Another shark was lying in the park. A hammerhead caused a big traffic jam on the road, and this tiger shark fell on a fire truck. Fortunately, they all have tough skin and strong muscles that protect them from damage. You pick up all the sharks and move them back to the ocean. No one and nothing has been hurt except for one thing: your reputation. You have failed your villainous plan and need to develop something new. This time, you'll create something that will really terrify people. You will invent a YouTube channel with nothing but ads. Alternate ending. You will invent a mega flood of spiders. Ew.
Did you used to make sandcastles at the beach when you were little? The structure had a moat, so you needed to dig deep. While holding a plastic shovel, you probably thought, how deep can I go? Well, this question motivated a group of scientists in the Far East. They have decided to dig the deepest hole in their home country, China. The drilling team's goal is to reach a depth of nearly 33,000 feet. That's about 1 1/10 times as deep as Mount Everest is tall. The location of the borehole is at the edge of the second largest shifting sand desert in the world, Taklamakan Desert. During a single day, air temperatures there can vary over 100 degrees. The drilling rig is impressive on its own. It weighs some 550 tons and is the height of a 20-story building. And it's pretty powerful, too. It can lift the equivalent of 120 adult elephants. These engineers aren't kidding. One of them compared the project to driving a big truck on 2 thin steel cables. That's why they expect the dig to last well over a year. Their ultimate goal is to drill downward through 10 layers of strata. These are horizontal layers of sedimentary rock. Sounds complicated? Just look at any exposed cliff and you'll notice how it has stripes of different colors. These are the strata I'm talking about. If we translate it from Latin to plain English, we'll get things that spread out. Makes sense. Each layer of rock represents a specific geological period. Remember Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster Jurassic Park? That's just one of these geological periods. It ended some 145 million years ago. But in Central Asia, scientists won't travel that far through time. They hope to reach the rock dating back to the Cretaceous. That's the geological period just after the Jurassic. It lasted until some 66 million years ago. This was the time when T-Rex still roamed North America. But why mount such a complicated operation in the first place? A single goal would be a waste of funds. That's why engineers in Central Asia have several objectives. They want to explore the planet's internal structure. This involves the search for natural resources, such as mineral deposits and oil. Another goal is to collect scientific data on earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The information will help researchers better predict these events in the future. So, hardcore science is behind this pioneering project, but it's not the first of its kind. Deep in the Arctic Circle lies the Kola Peninsula. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the famous beverage company from Atlanta. This Kola is a region of great natural beauty, covered in forests and lakes, and an abandoned scientific research station. Inside this crumbling building, a rusty metal cap sticks out from the concrete. It doesn't look that impressive today, but this is the site of the deepest man-made hole on the planet. It is over 40,000 feet deep. That's deeper than the Mariana Trench, 36,201 feet, the deepest place on Earth. Scientists were drilling it for nearly a quarter of a century. The project started in 1970 and finally shut down in 1995. But if you travel to this region close to Norway, you wouldn't be impressed by the shaft. It is only 9 inches in diameter. It would be impossible to fall down such a narrow opening. And despite the figures, the hole is pretty shallow on a bigger scale. You see, the drill bit went through only a third of the Earth's crust. Let me explain. Remember those layers of strata? Yup, that's what our planet looks like on the inside. The 3 layers are the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust accounts for only 1% of Earth's mass, and it's some 25 miles thick. But it holds nearly all life in the known universe. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. At the place where the crust meets the mantle, Moho, temperatures max out at 752 degrees Fahrenheit. Ouch. There are 2 types of Earth's outermost shell, oceanic and continental. The crust is thinner under the ocean floor, so why not drill here? Well, the thinnest part is usually the deepest part of the ocean. That doesn't mean that people haven't tried to drill into the seabed. Americans attempted this off the coast of Mexico in 1961, Project Mojole. Drilling underwater was more expensive than anyone anticipated. A few meters of basalt, the researchers were able to bring up costs some $40 million in today's money. Not worth the effort, literally. The Kola Super Deep borehole also burned money quickly. And that wasn't the only heat scientists had to face. The temperature at the top depth was a staggering 356 degrees Fahrenheit. That was double what the drilling team expected. Their machinery simply couldn't operate in that heat. At this depth, rocks behaved more like plastic than rock. If they had gone deeper, the stones would have the consistency of oversized caramels. But the drilling team gave their best. They even invented a new type of drill where only the tip rotated. There was also a lubricant to smoothen the process. This simply means they pumped a lot of pressured mud into the hole. Yet, they came short. Have scientists completely given up? Not by a long shot. The Japanese built a ship, Chikyu, 20 years ago to drill through the seabed, and they have invested a hefty sum in the project, $1 billion. The mission's goal was to drill into the Earth's crust where it's the thinnest. Under the ocean floor, it is less than 4 miles thick. If the Japanese team of scientists succeeds, it will be the first time humans recovered in situ mantle rocks. What is that? In situ is a Latin term that simply means in the original place. The only time we get to see what Earth's mantle looks like is during a volcanic eruption. A plume of hot mantle rising to the surface will form a volcano. You know the rest. But where are the Japanese researchers planning to drill? After all, they have a huge ship, so it could be anywhere in Earth's oceans. They've narrowed it down to 3 locations: Costa Rica, Hawaii, or Baja. In cartoons, characters often dig up a hole and end up in another country. The idea is that since our blue planet is round, and you dig straight down, you'll end up on the other side of the world. Sounds interesting, but this theory has no grounding in truth, pun intended. Science knows more about outer space than about what's underneath our feet. And digging won't get us far. The temperature at our planet's inner core exceeds 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The best heat-resistant materials humankind has developed, tantalum carbide and hafnium carbide, can withstand around 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Good enough for building spacecraft, but not good enough for traveling to the center of our planet. But will Jules Verne's famous novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth, ever become a reality? For now, we can only imagine. The vessel that would take someone to the center of the Earth would first have to have great insulation. Then it would have to withstand a pressure 4,000 times stronger than at sea level. Let's talk about the finances. The cost of this imaginary mission would be astronomical. The good news is that you could pay it off with what you find underground. At a certain depth, 93 miles, you'll stumble upon diamonds. They form when all that heat and pressure alter the structure of carbon atoms. The final leg of the journey would take you through the Earth's core. The temperature here is the same as on the surface of the sun. And you'd be traveling through molten iron and nickel. But that's not the weirdest fact. The outer core has low gravity. The mass of our planet would be behind you. So the gravitational force would actually pull your vessel backward. Future travelers to the center of the Earth better have a supercharge button. That would be the only way to reach the planet's inner core.
An earthquake in Indonesia began in 1829 and lasted a mighty 32 years. It reached its climax in 1861 and hit a magnitude of around 8.5. It was caused by the tectonic plates below the island slowly clashing against each other. Researchers discovered that the quake had been building for some time after analyzing the coral in the area. They found it was being periodically exposed to the open air. That was caused by the gradual earthquake moving the land up and down. Scientists call these decades-long silent earthquakes slow slip events. A single lightning bolt can warm the air to around 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat makes the air expand quickly, creating a shock wave or boom, which we know to be thunder. There are close to 3 trillion trees on Earth. That translates to roughly around 422 trees for every person. Before humans, the number was nearer to 6 trillion. Almost 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, which on average is around 2.5 miles deep. 97% of Earth's volcanoes lie underwater, as well as the mid-ocean ridge, a massive mountain range that is over 40,000 miles long. Humans have mined around 190,000 tons of gold from the planet. Experts predict there is around 20% still left to be mined, but this figure is constantly changing. The world's largest active volcano is in Hawaii. Called Mauna Loa, it's over 2.5 miles above sea level. Given that most of it is underwater, the volcano's summit is a staggering 11 miles from its base. That's the same length as over 160 football fields. The highest ever recorded temperature on Earth was a sweltering 136 degrees Fahrenheit. It was recorded in El Azizia, or modern-day Libya, on September 13, 1922. The lowest temperature was a chilling minus 129 degrees Fahrenheit, recorded at Russia's Vostok station in 1983. Earth is the 5th largest planet in the solar system, behind Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. It has a circumference of roughly 25,000 miles, and it would take the average person around 8,300 hours to walk around the face of the Earth. The separation between Earth's land masses would make such a trek almost impossible, though. It takes 365.25 days for the Earth to orbit the Sun. Because our calendar years only have 365 days, we add an extra leap day every 4 years to make up for the difference. Russia is the largest country on the planet, with a total area of about 6.5 million square miles. It encompasses more than 1/8 of the Earth's inhabited land area, but still has a relatively small population given its size. Earth is the only planet with one moon. Mercury and Venus have no moons, while every other planet has 2 or more. Earth is over 4 billion years old. Scientists calculate this by looking at the planet's oldest rocks, as well as meteorites that have crash-landed. They used meteorites as they were formed at the same time as Earth, when the solar system was forming.
the ground we walk on is basically recycled. The planet's rock cycle turns igneous rocks to sedimentary ones, then transforms those into metamorphic rocks, and back again. Like Earth, our moon also experiences earthquakes. They're less common and intense than the ones we have, and are caused by tidal stresses. A tidal stress is basically the relationship between the gravitational pull of the moon on the Earth and that of the Earth on the moon. Despite being the 5th largest continent, Antarctica holds 70% of the planet's fresh water and about 90% of its ice. Bangkok is the most visited city in the world, boasting 23 million visitors in 2019 alone. Paris, London, Dubai, and Singapore make up the other cities in the top 5. The lowest layer of Earth's atmosphere is called the troposphere and is the reason we have weather. Sunlight heats the planet's surface, which causes warm air to rise up to the troposphere. This air then expands and cools as the air pressure decreases and sinks down, where it is then warmed by the Earth again. Coral reefs are the largest living structures on the planet, with some even being visible from space. Coral reefs hold the most species per area of any of Earth's ecosystems, even more than rainforests. Earth got its name around 1,000 years ago, and it comes from the German word meaning the ground, but there's no evidence to show who actually named it. Of all the planets, Earth is also the only one which is not named after a Greek or Roman deity. The deepest point of the ocean is the Mariana Trench. It's a whopping 7 miles below sea level. Coastlines cover about 20% of U.S. land, but are home to more than 50% of the U.S. population. The Earth isn't actually a sphere. It's more like a squished ball that bulges at the equator. The bulge is caused by the force of the Earth spinning, which makes the north and south poles slightly flat. The Earth spins on its axis, which is basically an imaginary straight line. Earth has seasons because the axis is tilted, causing the sun's rays to hit different parts of the planet more directly, depending on the time of year. If the sun was as tall as a standard door, the Earth would be around the size of a nickel. The Earth's rate of rotation is gradually decreasing. It's happening so slowly that it would take as much as 140 million years for the length of a day to increase to 25 hours.
Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print.
The biggest animal on Earth is the Antarctic blue whale. It can reach lengths of 100 feet and weigh up to 400,000 pounds, which is around the same as 33 elephants. The temperature at the center of the Earth is around the same as the surface of the Sun, at almost 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Earth is around 10,000 times older than humans. Earth is around 4.5 billion years old, whereas humans have been around for, at most, 450,000 years. There are around 34,000 known species of fish. The actual number is way higher though, as a whopping 95% of our oceans still haven't been explored. America's Route 66 is longer than the journey to the Earth's core. The distance to the core is roughly 2,000 miles. Route 66 is almost 2,500 miles. The Earth is made up of 3 main components: the crust, the mantle, and the core, which is divided into the outer core and the inner core. Scientists have estimated that there are around 8.7 million species on the planet. Out of this, between 1 to 2 million of these species are animals. But roughly 86% of land species and 91% of fish have yet to be discovered by humans. Ancient astronomers used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe. For 2,000 years, they believed the Earth to be static, while other bodies traveled in orbit around us. In 1543, Copernicus published his sun-centered model of the solar system. Earth is the densest planet in the solar system. The density varies across its different crusts, but the planet's average density is just over 3 ounces per cubic inch. Mount Everest is the highest point on the planet. Its peak is the highest altitude above sea level at around 5.5 miles. Each year, 1 septillion crystals of snow fall on Earth. That's a trillion snowflakes. Snow covers about 31% of Earth's land area each year. Of Earth's water, only around 3% is fresh water. The other 97% is salted. Of that 3%, about 2% is frozen in ice and glaciers. So, less than 1% of the planet's fresh water is actually in lakes, rivers, and underground. The world's largest inland body of water, or lake to us normal people, is the Caspian Sea. It has an area of 140,000 miles squared. The world's deepest lake is Lake Baikal in Russia and is 5,300 feet deep. Earth's atmosphere is roughly 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, with small amounts of water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other gases. No other planet is believed to have this much oxygen, which explains why Earth is the only planet where life has been discovered so far. Apart from the Moon, there are 2 asteroids in co-orbital orbits with Earth, sometimes called Earth's second moon. 3753 Cruithne is an asteroid that looks like it's following the Earth in orbit, but it's actually following its own path around the Sun. 2002 AA29 is another asteroid which makes a horseshoe orbit around the Earth that draws it close to the planet every 95 years.
The air is bone dry and the wind is out of control. You feel like you're standing in front of a fireplace, but you're not. You're standing in your backyard about to grill up a feast when you suddenly see the trees shaking uncontrollably. Leaves are falling like confetti. The wind just blew your last piece of laundry into the great unknown. You look around and everyone else is just as confused and scared as you are. In the distance, you see a red horizon of fire in the forest and a large vortex touching the sky. You drop everything and make a break for it. You'll be lucky to outrun a tornado. They usually move at around 30 miles per hour, but can reach up to 70. Imagine running away from a giant twister, hurtling towards you at Usain Bolt speed. The roads are crowded with people trying to find shelter or just get out of town. You get in your car and try to start it, but the wind knocks a sign over. It smashes your windshield. Anyway, a big tornado is powerful enough to swing your entire car around. You gotta go on foot. Best bet? Head for your buddy's house. They have a deep basement stocked with supplies. Whenever a tornado flies on by, try to take cover somewhere underground. If you don't have a basement, avoid any windows and try to stay underneath something sturdy to protect yourself. You're running to your friend's place. Everything around you is getting swept up by the insane winds. But when you turn around, you see the tornado turning reddish. You can barely see it because of the debris, but the spinning vortex, it's on fire. It's a fire tornado. These spinning flame winds can reach 140 miles per hour and can be between 15 to 150 feet tall and as much as 500 feet wide. These monsters occur when tons of smoke get whirled around, so the thunderstorm starts to act like a tornado. By the way, many fire tornadoes can even occur in a bonfire and are called fire whirls. Next time you're camping or setting up your living room fireplace, check it out. You might just spot one spinning around in there. Anyway, it's getting closer and closer, throwing ash all over. It's already pretty hard for you to see where you're going. You use your hands to wave off some of the smoke and ash flying around your face, but it's useless. You keep sprinting as fast as you can until you spot a huge truck. Just park right there in the middle of the road. You crawl underneath. It's one of those trucks that has like 20 wheels. They look so big and heavy up close. Then you hear a creaking sound and a humming sound. The wheels, they look magical. Gracefully, they start lifting off the ground, as if the truck's part of some Vegas magic act. As the tornado gets closer, the wheels rise higher. Better to be far away from here when the truck smashes back down to earth. You crawl out and keep running. You find a convenience store to take cover in, making sure not to stand too close to the glass. You head as far into the store as you can, ready to wait this thing out. But all around you, the land is burning. This fiery twister is a monster, and it's charging towards you. You look out in the distance and see another fire tornado wrecking another part of the city. In order for a tornado to form, it needs open space. That's why many of the tornadoes you see on the news happen in the same part of the US, where there aren't many mountains and it's nice and flat. But of course, they can happen anywhere. It's not normal to see tornadoes in the bustling downtowns of America's biggest cities. They need a lot of open space for the rotating vortex to happen. But today is not a normal day. A tornado forms in a supercell thunderstorm. That's when you have two different air temperatures going at it. The vortex you see in tornadoes forms when warm air and moisture come in from above. Below, it's a mess. The end result, the huge spiral funnel cloud we see in every tornado movie. Meteorologists can predict tornadoes somewhat by monitoring the amount of moisture in the air. Every second counts, so keep the TV on next time there's a storm brewing near you. But this doesn't really apply for a fire tornado. The winds are getting stronger and you're feeling the heat even inside the store. Outside, spiraling flamethrowers are torching everything in their path. It may be too late to find an underground shelter. You improvise a way to help protect yourself by hiding underneath the cash register. And now, you can't see anything. There's ash everywhere and the windows are all smashed, thanks tornado. Ash is one of the most dangerous parts of a fire tornado, unless you're not really into breathing or seeing. Your best bet would be to stay as low as you can to the ground. Since smoke rises, there might still be just enough oxygen down there. Crawling your way along will prevent you from getting struck by any flying objects or debris. The fires are now spreading, and there's a lot more smoke. The trees outside have caught fire, and there are glowing embers as far as the eye can see. These embers can travel more than a mile and can start fires on their own. Now that it's really going crazy, stuff in the store starts flying about, like the smoke wasn't bad enough. You feel like you're inside a snack-filled erupting volcano. It's only a matter of time before the table you're hiding under will get pulled up into the air. The sound inside the store is intense, like sitting next to a jet engine. You can't tell if you're sweating from the heat or from adrenaline. But suddenly, you see someone at the other end of the store waving at you, trying to tell you something. They have an underground storage room. You're saved. But getting there is going to be a real problem. You see the table screws getting loose, getting ready to fly into the air. You find a bottle of water next to you and rip a piece of cloth from your shirt. By using a wet cloth, you're able to filter out some of the nasty stuff in the air to help you keep breathing. So you crawl your way out from underneath the table and make your way to the underground storage room. But the ground is covered with broken glass, and there are cans and stuff everywhere. Even the cans are starting to heat up. You crawl like a sloth, trying to avoid anything pointy. The fire tornado is still out there, and it's getting even closer. You finally make it, and the clerk pulls you down the stairs. It's dark, but there's a single battery-powered lamp to help you see. When it comes to fire tornadoes, it's best to just wait it out. Most of these firestorms don't last that long. So you relax, or try to, and wash your face in a nearby sink. You wipe off all the black ash from your face and breathe normally again. But as you get a bit more relaxed, you feel the ground shaking. Everything around you starts to fall. You and the clerk duck behind a pile of canned goods. Then the tornado takes it up a notch. The store above you gets lifted up off the ground. The only things left, steel and concrete foundations and a couple of random columns. The steel door that's separating you from the outside is barely holding it together. You can see the screws getting loose. You can actually see fire enter the storage room. Everything in the room gets toppled over in an instant. The wind is even louder than before. But then, it's over. Those few minutes felt like hours. You and the clerk climb out and see, well, not much to be honest. The convenience store looks like it got ripped off like a Band-Aid. And all around you, a town you can't even recognize anymore. The big problem with these fire tornadoes is the fires they leave behind. They can ruin towns, forests, farms, and lives. A huge power outage hit Spain, Portugal, and parts of southwest France all at once, leaving millions of people without electricity. It happened on Monday morning, April 28, 2025, and caused lots of problems. Airports couldn't function, trains stopped in places like Lisbon and Madrid, and some hospitals had to cancel surgeries because they had no power. Everything just came to a stop. No one is sure yet what caused the blackout, but the company in charge of Portugal's electricity said it might have been something strange called induced atmospheric vibration. That's a rare and weird thing that can happen in the sky and might mess with power systems. It occurs when substantial changes in temperature and wind mess with giant power lines, making them wiggle and shake in strange ways. These wobbles can confuse the power system and cause big problems. So, REN, the company that runs Portugal's electricity, first said that those weird wobbles might be the reason everything went dark. But later, they said that was not really what happened. According to REN, the real reason for the blackout was a huge voltage change, like a power surge, in Spain's power grid. At that moment, Portugal was using electricity from Spain. When that enormous power fluctuation hit, it triggered automatic safety systems in Portugal. Those systems shut everything down to protect power plants. Sadly, it also caused a nationwide blackout. During extreme weather in Spain, the air temperature changes fast, and that makes immense power lines stretch or shrink like rubber bands. That changes how tight they are and how they move in the wind, which can mess with both their physical balance and the electricity flowing through them, making the entire system unstable. Some experts say that if things get bad enough, this can even break power lines, cause short circuits, or even damage the towers holding up the lines. That's why safety systems are always in place. They're supposed to shut parts of the grid down automatically to stop bigger disasters. During the blackout, something like a domino effect happened. When parts of the power grid shut down, it made other parts unstable too. Some of the big electricity generators couldn't handle the chaos and had to disconnect. And when you suddenly lose those big generators, the power system can't keep up. It's something like too many people needing electricity, but not enough of it being made. It can cause even more blackouts to spread fast. Nobody knows exactly what started the blackout. Some people wondered if it might have been a cyber attack, like someone messing with the system on purpose through computers. But officials from Spain and the European Commission said that there was no proof of that. Spain's electricity company made it clear. Cyber attack? Nope, that's not the problem. Still, one big reason so many places were hit is because Europe's power grids are all connected like one big web. Usually, that's a good thing, since if one country has a problem, another can help by sharing electricity. At the same time, everything has to stay super balanced. The amount of electricity being made must match how many people are using it. If even one part gets knocked out, it can mess things up for other parts nearby, especially if they were depending on it. In other words, when something big goes wrong, it can travel through that web and cause problems in lots of countries at once, just like what happened in this case. And it's not the first time this kind of thing has happened. Back in 2003, most of Italy had no power for 12 hours because of a problem with an electricity line connected to Switzerland. In 2006, overloading of lines coupled with low temperatures caused too much power to surge through Germany's grid, which ended up knocking out power in many parts of Europe. Anyway, speaking of the recent blackout, by Tuesday morning, things started getting better. Most of the lights came back on across the Iberian Peninsula. That's Portugal and Spain. All of Portugal had power again, and 99% of Spain did too. Now, the people in charge are trying to figure out exactly what went wrong and how to make sure it never happens again. So yeah, power grids are awesome when they work. When things go wrong, they can go really wrong. Now, let's travel back into the past, to the year 2012. Long time ago, huh? That's when India had one of the biggest blackouts in history. More than 600 million people lost electricity. That's like half the country or the entire population of Europe. This huge mess happened when 3 enormous power grids all broke down at once. Yep, those very grids that move electricity around. So when they fail, the lights go out everywhere. Because of this, entire cities just stopped working. Trains couldn't move, water pumps stopped, traffic lights went dark, and people were stuck all over the place. In Delhi, the capital city, the metro shut down, and passengers had to be helped off the trains. Without traffic lights, the roads turned into giant traffic jams. The blackout hit 20 of India's 28 states, including big ones like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, and West Bengal. In West Bengal, around 200 miners got stuck underground because the elevator stopped working. Luckily, they were all rescued safely. Engineers worked all night to fix things, and by the next day, they managed to get the power back on for all 3 grids. In India, smaller power cuts happen a lot, especially in cities. That's because the country doesn't make enough electricity for everyone, and the equipment they use is pretty old. But a full grid collapse like this is rare. Before this, it happened in northern India back in 2001, so when it happened again in 2012, and across 3 grids no less, it was very important. Everything just shut down, and it showed how much the system needed fixing. But blackouts like these happened in Europe before, too. Back in 2006, something weird happened because people in Germany got cold. It was a chilly Saturday night, and families in northern Germany turned on their heaters all at once. This sudden spike in energy use put a huge load on the power grid. To make things worse, one major power cable had been turned off for a bit so a ship could pass under it. Ooh, talk about bad timing. The grid couldn't handle everything, and it started breaking down. First, Western Germany had blackouts. Then, things started going wrong in France, where even the big French power company, EDF, couldn't keep up with demand. Before long, power was going out in Paris, its suburbs, and other parts of the country. Then the trouble spread to Italy, Spain, and Belgium, and even Morocco. Millions of homes were left without power. In France alone, about 5 million people were left in the dark. Trains stopped running, and fire crews got loads of calls from people stuck in elevators. One of the people in charge said the whole thing started falling apart like a house of cards. Country after country started pulling power from France, which only made things worse. To stop a total blackout across all of Europe, they had to shut down some electricity for a short while on purpose. Over in Italy, the lights went out in both northern and southern regions. This country often imports electricity from other places, so it got hit hard. A few years earlier, in 2003, most of Italy had gone dark during another big blackout. Belgium had its own problems, while Spain saw power cuts in some of their larger cities. Even trains and high-speed rail had to stop in some places. It all started because too many people needed electricity at the same time, and the European power network couldn't keep up. Experts later said that the whole thing showed just how badly Europe needed to update and fix its old electricity systems to stop something like this. So, in the end, will the sun be to blame for destroying our planet? Or how about a huge meteorite? Or some kind of disease? Probably not. It seems that life will disappear for a very unexpected reason. Humans, animals, insects, fish, and most microbes will be wiped off the face of the Earth because of oxygen, or more precisely, because of its absence. Recent research has shown that the number of freshwater reservoirs with very low or no oxygen levels in coastal areas is increasing worldwide. Over the past 65 years, 4 times more oxygen-deficient waters have appeared in the world's oceans. What does it all mean? It's likely that life on Earth will vanish much sooner than the sun's energies dries up all the oceans. The end is likely to come in a little more than 1 billion years. But this doesn't mean that the planet will disappear too. The period when Earth is filled with oxygen will make up just about 20 to 30% of the total lifespan of the planet. So we're just temporary guests here. Just think how long that is, 1 billion years. The first Homo sapiens appeared only about 300,000 years ago. That is, the entire history of humanity occupies less than 500,000 years. So relax. 1 billion years won't pass very fast. By that time, humans won't be on Earth anymore. We might master space travel and find a new planet in the vast depths of space. But why can we lose air? As the sun heats up, the planet gets warmer and warmer, and this heat breaks down carbon dioxide, the gas which is necessary for all plants to photosynthesize. Without carbon dioxide, they can't produce oxygen. With a drop in carbon dioxide levels, the methane content will increase, and this gas is quite harmful to us. Now, this all sounds logical, but this is a secondary reason for the lack of oxygen. The real problem is something else entirely. As the sun becomes brighter, it will begin to heat rocks on Earth, such as granite and basalt. These rocks will start to break down faster. When they collapse, they take carbon dioxide from the air, which warms our planet. If there's less carbon dioxide in the air, Earth should become colder. But there's a problem. The sun will shine more, and its heat will outweigh this cooling effect. So even if rocks take away carbon dioxide, the sun will blaze so much that Earth will still become extremely hot. Next, when the sun shines more intensely, it, along with other natural factors, contributes to the breakdown of granite and basalt. These rocks mix with carbon dioxide and water to make carbonates, which go deep into the Earth. This takes carbon dioxide out of the air, which means plants can't make as much oxygen because they need carbon dioxide to do that. Besides, volcanoes release gases, which also reduce the amount of oxygen in the air. So the sun, by destroying rocks, affects what happens inside Earth and controls how much oxygen there will be in the air. In about 1 billion years, the sun will become so bright that no rocks will be able to save Earth from its heat, and the escaping gases will halt photosynthesis and oxygen production. And then, our planet will return to the state it was in about 2.4 billion years ago, to the time when the Great Oxidation Event began. And this event was much more important than, say, the first Olympic Games or the appearance of humans on the planet. Billions of years ago, there was almost no oxygen on Earth. Instead, there was a soup of gases, such as nitrogen, ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, and others. Yes, we have these gases in the atmosphere today, but there used to be a lot more of them in the past. It was difficult for any form of life to originate in such conditions. But after some struggle, it succeeded. At first, Earth was inhabited by the simplest bacteria, including cyanobacteria. They learned how to make oxygen using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. These bacteria worked for millions and billions of years and made so much oxygen that it began to accumulate in the air. This was what we now call the Great Oxidation Event. It was like a great celebration of life, because with oxygen, new living beings could appear. But by the way, cyanobacteria didn't learn photosynthesis because they were like, oh, let's make oxygen, it's so cool. No, oxygen was just a byproduct. Cyanobacteria wanted only one thing, to get as much energy as possible. And for this, they learned photosynthesis. It helped them store energy using sunlight. They used special pigments to absorb light, and the result of this process was the release of oxygen. This had been going on for hundreds of millions of years, and then, at some point, they made too much oxygen. This oxygen started to spoil other gases that had been there before. For example, it ate a lot of methane. Because of this, Earth cooled down a bit, and the Ice Age began. But that's another story. In short, in 1 billion years, we risk going back to that difficult time. But let's hope that we'll manage to move to another planet on our spaceships or come up with some other solution. And what'll happen to our home planet next? Will new life be able to originate there without so much oxygen? Well, it's possible, but it'll be much more difficult. This will require another source of energy besides the sun. It can be, for example, hydrothermal vents. And by the way, there are ecosystems on Earth that use this type of energy. You can find one of them in the Mobile Cave in Romania. Imagine a place where there's little oxygen. It's dark. The sun's rays don't reach there. Over millions of years of evolution, a unique and slightly creepy life has developed in this cave. It was first discovered in 1986, and scientists are still exploring this place. The entrance to the cave is just a small hole in the ground. A narrow tunnel goes deep underground. Inside the cave, the air is filled with hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, and there's half as much oxygen there as on the surface. A human can't stay there without a special mask. But for local forms of life, this is home, and they feel great there. There are several dozen species living in the cave, and many of them aren't found anywhere else on Earth. Here you can see strange little monsters, white snails, white spiders, centipedes with long whiskers, transparent shrimp, and even unknown species of leeches. Since there's no light in the cave, all these creatures don't need eyes. They're blind, but they have long sensitive antennae and paws that allows them to navigate in the space. They also have no colored pigment, so all these bugs and spiders are either white or transparent. But if there's so little oxygen there, and nobody does photosynthesis, then how does all this life survive? It's all thanks to the unique bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and produce nutrients. These bacteria are food for other organisms, and those, in turn, become food for larger creatures. So a whole food chain has been built in the cave, which provides all the inhabitants with food. Evolution has created a unique ecosystem that exists separately from the rest of the world. It's like a small universe that has developed according to its own rules. However, this universe is not expanding, because all living beings here can't live away from hydrothermal vents and autotrophs. Otherwise, where would they get their energy from? But let's imagine that the sun cools down, almost all the oxygen disappears, and the entire planet gets covered with hydrothermal vents. It's dark, and the air is filled with methane, CO2, and other substances. And somehow, life begins. Even people appear at one point. What would they look like? Pale, thin, and blind creatures with very long arms that help them navigate in space. They have pets, large centipedes or cockroaches that move silently on the ground. People are also quiet because they don't have lungs filled with air to scream. There's silence in the world. People communicate through touch. No one travels. Everyone lives separately next to their hydrothermal source. The whole world has turned into a horror movie in 1 billion years.
For hundreds of years, people in the US have reported hearing strange, loud booms. These mysterious sounds are called skyquakes. And yep, it's a real thing. If you've ever heard a loud, distant booming noise that definitely wasn't a thunderstorm or a car engine backfire, congrats, it looks like you've experienced a skyquake yourself. People report them all around the globe, from the US to India and Japan. They go under different names, and we still don't know why exactly they happen. Sometimes these booms come together with earthquakes. People heard them during the New Madrid earthquakes in the early 19th century and up until January 2020. Those who've experienced them describe skyquakes as a rushing or rolling noise. Famous American writer James Fenimore Cooper described it more poetically as the lake speaking to the surrounding hills, which send back the echoes of its voice in accurate reply. Sometimes these mysterious booms happen in cold weather instead of during earthquakes. One of the skyquake hotspots is near Lake Seneca in New York. They call them the Seneca Guns. The booms can be so loud that they shake windows and doors. Back in August 1886, after an earthquake in Charleston, people heard these noises for several weeks, happening at the same time as many aftershocks from the earthquake. In 2020, scientists from the University of North Carolina looked at old news pieces, especially from North Carolina, where people have often reported these sounds. They hoped to match the noises with earthquakes data, but they didn't find any link between the sounds and earthquakes. One of the researchers said they believe the noises are happening in the air, not underground. The team looked at infrasounds, which are low-frequency noises that humans can't hear. They found signals lasting 1 to 10 seconds that match the times when people reported hearing the booms, but nothing is certain here. Some people think that solar flares, underwater tsunamis, or caves collapsing under the sea cause skyquakes. Others believe the sounds come from planes making loud sonic booms. But that doesn't explain old records of skyquakes from the past before planes were even invented. Some scientists think a type of meteor called a bolide causes these booms. These meteors blow up when they hit Earth's atmosphere. If this happened above thick clouds, the sound would get louder and travel far, but we wouldn't find anything on the ground. Another idea is that gas might be escaping from the bottom of deep lakes, like Lake Seneca. If you think skyquakes are bizarre, let me introduce you to fog bows. They also go under the name of white rainbows, ghost rainbows, or cloud bows. They form in a similar way to regular colorful rainbows, but are much wider. Rainbows happen when there are big raindrops in the sky, and you can always spot them on the opposite side of where the sun is shining. Fog bows are made by tiny droplets in fog or clouds instead of big raindrops, and they also appear opposite the sun. If you want to see a fog bow, you need to look for it in a thin fog when the sun is bright. You might catch one when the sun starts to shine through the fog, or if you're near the ocean where fog often forms. Because the water droplets in fog are so tiny, fog bows don't have bright colors like rainbows. They might even look all white, or just have faint colors. Some fog bows are hard to see at first because they blend into the mist, but once you spot them, they're easy to recognize. The next rare weather phenomenon you gotta watch out for is thunder snow. You guessed it right, it's a special type of thunderstorm that happens during a snowstorm. Unlike regular thunderstorms that often strike in the spring and summer, thunder snow is much rarer because it happens in the strongest winter storms, like big blizzards, and at the same time needs warm air, which isn't a frequent combo. So, for thunder snow to happen, there needs to be moisture in the air, some instability, and something to lift the air like rising winds. Just like in normal thunderstorms, lightning can appear when you hear thunder. Thunder snow lightning usually goes from cloud to cloud instead of hitting the ground, and the thunder sounds different too, more like a low rumble instead of a loud boom, because the snow muffles the sound. You aren't so likely to get struck by it, but it's still important to stay inside when you hear thunder to stay safe. Northern Lights fans, this one is for you. Scientists noticed a new kind of glow in the sky that looked like a purple streak. They nicknamed it Steve as a joke, but later gave it a more scientific name: Strong Thermal Emission Velocity Enhancement, Steve for short. Steve is actually a fast-moving stream of super hot gas that always moves west and only shows up before midnight. They wondered if something like Steve could happen after midnight, but moving in the opposite direction. And now, scientists think they found the anti-Steve by looking at data from a research station in Norway. In December 2021, they took a picture of a bright purple streak stretching for 620 miles in the sky, and it only appeared after midnight. Satellites from the European Space Agency also measured the conditions in this part of the sky and found that the ions were moving eastward. Steve's late-night twin hasn't been officially named yet, but it would be cool if it was called SAM, which is short for Steve After Midnight. If you've ever seen snow on a sunny day when falling from the sky without a single cloud, it must have been diamond dust. It's a special kind of weather with millions of tiny ice crystals forming close to the ground. These ice crystals float slowly in the air, kind of like how dust floats in your house. When sunlight hits these crystals, they sparkle like diamonds. Unlike regular snow, diamond dust can fall from a cloudless sky, which is why they sometimes call it clear sky precipitation. It happens because of temperature inversion. Normally, it gets colder as you go higher up from the ground. But in a temperature inversion, the cold air stays near the ground, and warmer air sits above it. The warm air has more water vapor, and when it mixes with cold air near the ground, it turns directly into ice crystals, and diamond dust is born. For this to happen, the air near the ground has to be really, really cold, way below freezing temperature. Diamond dust can fall for days, but it's so light that it usually doesn't pile up on the ground like regular snow. A fall streak hole, also known as a hole punch cloud, is next on our list. This big circular or oval-shaped gap sometimes appears in certain clouds. These types of clouds float high up in the sky and are often made of tiny water droplets that are colder than freezing, but they haven't frozen yet. These special water droplets are called supercooled, and they need a reason to freeze. Ice crystals give them that reason.
When a plane flies through the cloud, it can bring those ice crystals into the cloud. Once the ice crystals are there, the supercooled water droplets freeze quickly, get bigger, and start to fall from the ground. This creates a hole in the cloud, and as more nearby droplets freeze, the hole gets bigger and spreads outward. Any tornado is scary, but a fire tornado takes the horror to a new level. These bad boys are spinning towers of flame and ash that form when there's extreme heat, strong winds, and uneven ground. The intense heat from the fire causes hot air to rise quickly. Cooler air from the sides rushes in to replace it and creates strong winds. When winds from different directions meet, it makes the fire spin like a tornado. It gets stronger and can even create its own weather. It pulls in flames, ash, dirt, and anything in its path. The winds can reach speeds of over 140 miles per hour, and these fire tornadoes can last for more than 20 minutes.
There are many miles of undiscovered areas beneath the crust we can't even come close to. Scientists found what appears to be underground mountains buried inside the mantle. Our planet is divided into 3 layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust is where 8 billion people, trillions of trees, and millions of animals live and thrive. There are also different types of crust in the land and the ocean. The oceanic crust contains unique rocks and is denser than the land crust. We all see how the Earth is divided and color-coded to show the crust, mantle, and core in textbooks. But there are also special layers in between that not everyone talks about. The mantle is divided into the upper and lower part, which is the transition zone. Since the mantle acts as the geological recycling center, the plate tectonics don't only move side to side, but up and down. It's actually why all the volcanoes appeared. The magma spews out to the surface or even underwater, and then sinks back down and repeats. The transitions go down 250 miles and then 410 miles. And in this bottom layer, scientists keep discovering the hidden landscapes. The mountains in the mantle are more rugged and much larger than the ones on the crust. Scientists found a mountain range with peaks higher than Mount Everest. Some of them are as high as 600 miles. When the continents were still landlocked together, there may have been some hidden lands now underwater. Theories suggest that Iceland used to be part of a larger microcontinent, Icelandia, which connected present-day Iceland with Greenland and Scandinavia. The idea digs even deeper to a greater Icelandia, which includes Britain. But after the split, these bigger lands sunk with everything in it. There are also theories about New Zealand being part of Zealandia, a hidden microcontinent within the same region. So it could be that these mountains used to be part of old Earth that are underground over the billions of years of natural occurrences, but still it isn't very likely. One theory is that these underground mountain ranges could be leftover slabs of rock that descended from the surface to the transition zone from the moving of the tectonic plates. As they sink, the large pieces break down into smaller ones, and as they compile over the millions of years, they form what appears to be underground mountains. Since the mantle is the geologic recycling zone, it's likely that the rocks down there used to be part of the surface. They weren't large pieces of land that got hidden, just like dogs hide bones in the garden, but it takes way more time to hide mountains. Some parts of the mantle appear to be smooth, while others aren't so much. The parts that have a cluster of rocks could contain hidden elements in the underground mountains. The smoother parts don't have much seismic or volcanic activity, while the rough parts do. The best way to study those underground landscapes is to wait for an earthquake or a volcano eruption to happen. Seismologists can observe the Earth's interior with special scanners, just like doctors use ultrasound to examine a patient. They can even see minor details and not huge chunks of rocks. A strong enough earthquake can send shock waves to the Earth's interior, even through the core and back up to the surface. Depending on where they occur, seismologists can observe and study the intensity of the waves as they move back and forth. On smooth rocks, the waves can travel in a straight line, but once they reach a rough area, the waves tend to scatter. The temperature and composition of the materials can make the waves move faster or slower, but this info isn't exactly accurate and won't contribute a lot to the actual data of the underground mountains. So, by analyzing the scattered waves on ships and utilizing the Earth's magnetic field, scientists can figure out everything they need to know. But these studies are only good enough to figure out the interior in today's state, not how the Earth changed over the past 4.5 billion years. However, scientists are certain that mantle material still dates back to the beginning of Earth's original formation. The question, why not just dig a hole to the center of the Earth and see what's going on down there, might seem logical. The deepest hole humans have dug so far is the Kola Deep borehole in the Russian Arctic that goes more than 40,000 feet deep. The locals claim they can actually hear screaming coming from below. It took almost 20 years to drill as far as they went, but it's literally merely scratching the surface of what's underneath. They dug about 1/3 of the crust, which is only 0.2% to the center of the Earth. Getting there is beyond us, just like trying to reach the sun. No human can handle the amount of pressure down there. Going down the Mariana Trench, the Earth's deepest point, requires special gear to withstand all the immense pressure. It'll cost a fortune to build that tech to get us to the center of our planet. Evidence of diamonds buried deep in Brazil shows that everything we do on the crust's surface can affect things miles below, even towards the mantle. Scientists dug up 6 diamonds that could hold tiny mineral grains. As they're called in the mineral world, these inclusions have a chemistry composition where they originated deep in the Earth. Typical diamonds are formed at depths less than 125 miles in the upper mantle, where it's extremely hot. The high pressure and boiling temperature down crystallizes carbon and creates diamonds. But humans can't dig all the way down there. They mine them by detecting where a deep volcanic eruption happened that expelled these diamonds to the surface. These eruptions occurred millions of years ago, when dinosaurs used to rule the Earth. They shot out the diamonds that were in the mantle and are now embedded within the cooled down volcanic material. That's where people mine them. But these special diamonds found in Brazil originated from a much deeper point than usual, which can further help scientists study the depths of the Earth. They can extract these inclusions and analyze them in a lab to tell where exactly these minerals come from. In the lab, scientists study inclusions, each just 15 to 40 microns wide, less than a quarter width of a human hair. They found out that they contained many types of minerals found in volcanic rock on the surface. The carbon composition of the magma from the surface is much different than the ones deep in the Earth. What's crazy is that these diamonds with special inclusions can only be found 435 miles in the lower mantle. With only a few samples of them found, we don't know what else lies beneath us. It's possible that those mountain ranges underground, taller than Mount Everest, can have traces of diamonds all around, which would prompt excavators to dig them up and saturate the market with them. These diamonds are less flawed than the usual ones and might even come in many sizes. It's possible to see diamonds as large as a car or as small as a grain of rice. There might even be new diamonds with different chemical compositions than the ones we find near the surface. The largest diamond in the world is the Cullinan, which can fit in the palm of your hand. It weighs around 1.3 pounds and is 3,100 carats. It was found in 1905 in South Africa. For anything to exist on Earth, you need carbon. In a nutshell, the carbon cycle is when plants and algae release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or dissolved in water through photosynthesis. It's converted into carbohydrates and stored as fat. Later on, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere through breathing, which the plants benefit from, and the cycle goes on. Scientists claim that there might even be a carbon cycle in Earth's interior. The oceanic crust has a lot of carbon sediment that could mix with the upper and lower mantle layer. But there still isn't enough evidence to support this. The deep diamonds might be the key to popping open that theory. Only time will tell. There's not much to do in Antarctica except scientific work. You could check out the wildlife, like some cute penguins and seals, and you'd get to see the occasional whale swimming around. Antarctica is one of the biggest lands out there that's only inhabited by scientists and researchers from all over the world. These scientists dug a hole through some pretty thick ice to study the ancient air and how the atmosphere cleans itself. They used a special drill and dug a clean cylindrical hole 450 feet below the surface. Some of this ice can be up to 800,000 years old and is a good indicator of what the climate was like in the past. It's like checking out tree rings to determine how old a certain tree is, except it's more complicated than that. After the effortless digging, they decided to drop some ice to the bottom of the hole to see what would happen next. They heard some really unusual sounds. It felt like being on a spaceship traveling through a bunch of obstacles with many rocks smashing into each other. The pitches changed over the quick descent of the block of ice, ranging from high pitch and ending with a low heartbeat-like sound. The scientists were puzzled when they first heard this and dropped some more ice, only to find out that the same type of sounds were being produced, just in different variations. They couldn't tell what was down there and, more importantly, why these kinds of sounds were produced. Antarctica boasts quite a few volcanoes, many of which are under super thick sheets of ice. Scientists discovered 91 volcanoes and claimed there could be more, potentially making it the most extensive volcanic region in the world. While they were doing regular scientific research, they came across many unmistakable large cone-shaped figures underground. Some were as deep as 2 miles in the ice. Some of the peaks were over 3,000 feet tall and dozens of miles across. But on the surface, it's as plain as a sheet of paper. They may have dropped that block of ice inside an actual volcano that they were standing on, but it's unlikely. Even though the underground volcano presence was discovered by accident, there's a small chance they were actually standing on one where they had their workstation set up. It's more likely that they worked in an area where studying ancient climates is easier and less dangerous than other places. They collect ice samples and study them in a lab. It's like discovering a prehistoric insect embedded in amber millions of years ago when dinosaurs used to roam the land. But instead of little bugs, scientists study ancient dust, air bubbles, sea salts, volcanic ash, and anything else that may have come from the environment. They can practically tell how the climate was during that time. These ice samples might show that Antarctica's western ice sheet melted when the Earth's climate warmed up. If it did, then it's likely to happen again. That would mean sea levels rising, affecting coastal cities and small remote islands. But scientists aren't sure it's true, despite some evidence to back it up. The process of studying ice samples can take a week or even a year, depending on what they find. They crush or melt the sample bit by bit. And like those tree rings, the deeper the layer, the further we go back in time. In order to study ancient bubbles trapped in ice, researchers have to crush the samples under a vacuum hood to keep the air out while extracting the air and putting it in vials. There are various instruments and devices to study the ice samples, but because it's so sensitive to damage, each measurement must be in a clean room setting so that nothing gets compromised. The scientists have to wear proper bodysuits and many layers of gloves and constantly get ventilated. Even something as tiny and insignificant as a fingerprint can ruin a sample. They look for certain patterns to see changes in the atmosphere's composition and temperature. But dropping a few blocks of ice down a hole wouldn't be so bad. The reason why it made such a peculiar sound is the same reason why a moving car sounds different when it's honking than when it's stationary. The scientific word for it is the Doppler effect. It's an obvious change in the frequency of a wave with respect to an observer who is moving relative to the wave source. The effect doesn't mean the frequency of the sound changes, it just shifts. And this can be said about other types of waves, like water and light. But sound waves are the most popular ones when it comes to the Doppler effect. So, when the scientists dropped the ice block down the bottom of the hole, the sound waves traveled back up and bounced around the narrow tube where they drilled. That's why they got the pew pew sound. Let's not forget that this ice block traveled 450 feet beneath us. Oil ships dig holes in the oceanic crust that go thousands of feet beneath the Earth. The Kola Super Deep Borehole in Russia is the deepest hole ever made by humans. It goes more than 40,000 feet below the surface and took almost 20 years to reach 7.5 miles. Below it is only half the distance to the mantle. In terms of the whole Earth, this very deep hole is literally scratching the surface. This wasn't a hole to dig for oil, and wasn't in the ocean either. The drilling was stopped in 1992 when the engineers found out that the temperatures were 100 degrees Fahrenheit higher than they predicted. And then it was abandoned, and it's just been a barren hole now. But that's the closest we've dug to the center of the planet. The scary thing is that some of the workers on the site could hear voices coming from within. All the way in Yemen, an ancient hole exists in Barhout, in the east of the country in the middle of the desert. It's actually closer to Oman than to the capital Sana'a. This hole has puzzled experts and locals. Unlike the holes in Russia and Antarctica, this wasn't man-made. Or was it? It's been around for many years, and the locals try to steer away from it. They don't even like talking about it, since they claim it brings bad luck to those around it, or to whoever utters its name. They claim it was created as a prison for spirits, but many rule that out. The hole is 98 feet wide and somewhere between 330 to 650 feet deep. You can also hear strange sounds coming from the inside. But according to some scientists, the well has little to no ventilation and barely has any oxygen down there. So it's unlikely that anyone or anything lives down there. The Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench caught some low-pitched grumble sounds in March of 2016. Some of these grumbles were followed by screeches. They caught these sounds in a span of weeks, using a titanium-encased microphone so that the immense pressure of the lowest point on Earth wouldn't crush it. They had to lower it slowly as well, since it's 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For 23 whole days, the microphone recorded typical sounds of whales passing by and boats sailing across from above, and even rumbles of nearby earthquakes, but they still couldn't determine what caused those initial sounds. The researchers couldn't understand if the noise from the bottom of the Mariana Trench was caused by humans or was natural. They also wanted to know if these sounds affected marine life, like dolphins and whales that rely on echolocation. They still can't figure it out, but scientists estimate that the ocean is about 10 times noisier than it was 50 years ago. With technological developments in shipping, submarines, and underwater construction, the ocean will only get louder with time. Northern lights come with sounds, which nobody talks about. They're usually audible when the auroras are at their most powerful presence. Scientists were always puzzled as to what caused the faint popping and crackling, even though they were very far above us. They used some special microphones and found out that the sounds came just 230 feet above us, which is pretty low. They're caused by electrical charges gaining power in a specific region of the auroras. The electrical charges are disturbed by magnetic storms that fire up the northern lights. As a result, some tiny sparks are released into the atmosphere, causing the faint crackling and popping noise.
When you think of beaches, the first scary thing that pops into your head is probably sharks, right? Those poor guys have a bad rap as the big bullies of the ocean, but honestly, they have way fewer fatal run-ins than jellyfish, algae, and even sand. Every year, tons of people flock to the beach to soak up the sun and chill by the waves, but digging holes in the sand can actually be pretty risky. In February 2024, a tragic incident occurred when a 7-year-old girl got trapped after a roughly 5-foot deep hole she dug with her brother caved in on her. Despite efforts from bystanders to rescue her, help arrived too late. You might think digging in the sand is harmless, but deep holes can be a final exit trap. Sand is defined by its size, not by its material. Most beach sand is quartz, but tropical spots might have coral sand. The weight of the sand depends on what's mixed in. Pure quartz is pretty light, around 90 pounds per cubic foot dried out, while more mixed sands can get way heavier. When sand is wet, it holds its shape better, but when it dries out, it's a whole different story. If you dig a hole and then it dries, it's likely to collapse. The danger increases dramatically if someone is standing near the edge, adding weight and making it even more unstable. Once that sand starts falling in, it fills up all the air pockets, making it hard for anyone trapped inside to breathe. Rescuing a person from a sand collapse is tough. Sand is heavy and keeps collapsing, so rescuers need to move fast. Ideally, they've got about 3 to 5 minutes before the trapped person suffocates. If you ever get in such a situation, the advice is to expose the person's mouth so they can breathe while someone else digs them out. If you're heading to the beach, be smart about holes. The best rule is to never dig a hole deeper than the knees of the shortest person in your group. Also, it's a good idea to fill any holes after you're done playing. It's all too easy for someone to stumble into a forgotten pit, and even a shallow hole can cause injuries. From 1997 to 2007, those sand holes took 31 lives in the US, and that's just within 10 years. Remember I told you sharks are responsible for fewer lives? From 1997 to this day, in 27 years, 29 people in the US have met their early demise because of sharks. Hitting the beach only to find a bunch of algae? Total buzzkill! But while some algae are totally fine, even to munch on, others can bring serious health risks, even if you're just hanging next to them. Algal blooms, or red tides, happen when algae go on a wild growth spree. These blooms can release nasty toxins that are bad news for humans, fish, shellfish, and even birds. One of the most well-known algal blooms rolls around almost every summer on Florida's Gulf Coast, leading to shellfish that are no longer safe to munch on. Even the ones that aren't toxic can throw a wrench in the ecosystem. When all that algae eventually withers and breaks down, it uses up the oxygen in the water, leaving marine life gasping for air. Folks definitely need to steer clear of eating shellfish from areas hit by these toxic algal blooms. Back in 1990, 6 fishermen almost met a tragic end after scarfing down some steamed mussels they'd gathered near Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Swimming in those waters doesn't always pose a serious health risk, but it's still not recommended. Some people might experience skin irritation or itchy eyes. Also, make sure to steer clear of swimming near dead fish, since that's where harmful bacteria can hang out. If you start to feel weird after getting in the water, it's best to get out and rinse off with fresh water right away. You know, it's not always some specific thing that makes certain beaches risky. Sometimes, beaches themselves are just full of surprises. Take Eddy Bay or Mission Beach in Australia, for example. The chances are you'll have to share the sand with cassowaries, some of the most intimidating birds on the planet. Picture getting all set to relax and sunbathe, only to find these giant flightless birds hanging out nearby. They're like emus, but scarier. They can weigh over 160 pounds and might be a bit aggressive, so watch out. If those birds don't freak you out, then the black sand beaches of Kilauea might just do the trick. They sure look inviting, but these beaches are right next to one of the most active volcanoes in the world, Mount Kilauea, which has been erupting since 1983, pouring hot lava into the ocean. These hot waters are not a big deal compared to some Hawaiian beaches. If you ever want to take a dip at Hanakapiai Beach on Kauai's coast, reconsider that plan. The beach is infamous for its strong rip currents that can pull you out to sea in an instant. If you find yourself caught in one, the nearest safe shore is a daunting 6 miles away. Official records show at least 30 fatalities here, but a nearby sign reportedly tallies up to over 80. Rips are those strong currents that pull water out to the ocean, and they can quickly drag people and stuff away from the shallow water near the beach. Typically, they move at about 1 to 2 miles per hour, but they can speed up to 4 or 5 miles per hour, which is faster than the speed of some professional swimmers. These currents are especially fierce when the surf is big, but you should never underestimate any body of water. You can also find rips around river mouths, estuaries, and even near structures like piers and groins. They can be tricky to spot, but you might notice a patch of churning, choppy water on the ocean's surface that signals a rip current. Rip tides aren't exclusive to some specific location. they can be found across the world. Playa Zapolite in Mexico, Australia's Fraser Island, and many more. Another water danger is shore break waves. Those are fierce waves that crash straight onto the beach, often right on the sand. Imagine the force of a car slamming down on your body. That's kind of what getting caught in a shore break feels like. Such waves can cause some gnarly injuries, particularly to your neck and spine, even if they don't look super huge. Hawaii is notorious for its intense shore breaks, especially spots like Keiki Beach, where surfers throw caution to the wind for a thrill. So, if you're hitting a Hawaiian beach, keep an eye on those insider waves and always look out for lifeguards. Getting stung by jellyfish is something that happens a lot to folks who are swimming, wading, or diving in the ocean. Those long tentacles can deliver venom through thousands of tiny, sharp stingers. However, to us humans, this venom doesn't do much. Yeah, it's very unpleasant. It gives us burning sensations and probably some skin redness, but that's mostly it. You won't even spot the stung area in a couple of days. Most jellyfish stings will heal up on their own in a few days or weeks with some at-home care, even though sometimes they can lead to something more dangerous with way more severe symptoms. However, if you're hanging out in the coastal waters of northern Australia and the Indo-Pacific region, and you get stung by a jellyfish, you're in for a lot of trouble, my friends. See, it's the area where box jellyfish live, and these jellies are no joke. Some people rightfully call them sea wasps or even marine stingers. They're probably the most hazardous and toxic jellyfish out there. Their sting is incredibly excruciating, so much so that some folks have experienced cardiac arrest before they even made it to the shore. Rumor has it, those jellies are responsible for taking nearly 80 lives in Australia since records started. So how do you tell who's who? Unlike regular jellies, box jellyfish got this pale blue see-through vibe. Also, they got their name because their bell-shaped body looks like a cube.
Let me take you to a place that seems to be out of this world. Life inside this cave has been isolated from the outside world for about 5.5 million years. And it does show. See for yourself. Due to such a long isolation, the conditions inside the Mobile Cave are like nowhere else on our planet. A unique ecosystem is flourishing there, even though there is a severe lack of sunlight inside the cave, and the air is toxic. The cave, located a few miles west of the Black Sea in Romania, was first discovered in 1986. Nowadays, you can only visit it if you have special permission. Plus, the central caverns are guarded naturally by narrow limestone tunnels and vertical shafts. So, if you're no stranger to claustrophobia, you'd probably better not enter this place. In the depth of the cave, the air has twice less oxygen than the air outside. Instead, it contains a lot of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, so not the freshest air you can breathe. It's also pitch black inside the cavern. But despite, or should I say thanks to, this cocktail of extremely harsh conditions, the site is a true goldmine for biologists. Shockingly, life seems to be booming here. In a 1996 study, scientists identified 48 species, and 33 of them were unique to the cave. Most of the creatures inhabiting the cave are tiny, with long limbs and antennae that help them navigate in the dark. They have no vision and lack pigment, and it makes sense. Why would you need to be able to see if you live in total darkness? And why would you need to be pretty and colorful with no one to see you? Now, I'm going to take you to another cave. It's no less amazing, but looks very different. This is the Giant Crystal Cave, aka the Cave of the Crystals, in Mexico. These ginormous crystals were found in 2000 by a mining company after the water was pumped out of the cave. 2 miners then saw the crystals after entering the drying cave on foot. These awe-inspiring crystals are actually massive gypsum pillars hidden 984 feet underground. They're anchored to the walls and the floor of the scorching hot cave. Scientists estimate that the crystals could have been already growing for 500,000 years. That's why many of them are so long and wide that you can walk across them. Unfortunately, visiting this wonder of nature is impossible at the moment. But maybe it's for the better, since the Giant Crystal Cave is a dangerous place that can easily turn into a trap. For tens of thousands of years, it was filled with groundwater, which was originally pushed upward into the opening by a magma chamber located in the depths of our planet. The magma under the cave kept the water hot, but eventually the temperature of the water dipped below 136 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, the water started to fill with calcium and sulfate, whose particles began to recombine into gypsum. And then, white-tinted crystals took over the cave. And since they stayed underwater, they were able to keep growing. You don't have to fly to space to take a closer look at a black hole. Scientists have found something very similar to black holes in the southern Atlantic Ocean. A black hole has such an enormous gravitational pull that once something gets pulled inside, it doesn't have any chance to escape. Even light can't get out of a black hole. But ocean black holes seem to be almost as powerful as their space relatives. But instead of catching the light, they do the same with water. Ocean eddies are massive whirlpools that spin against the main current. They usually swirl billions of tons of water, and most of them are larger than a city. These whirlpools are so powerful that nothing trapped by them can escape. But the scariest thing is that you might not even notice heading into one of them. These things are so huge that you won't spot their boundaries until it's too late. When scientists started exploring ocean vortices with the help of satellites, they discovered the borders of several eddies. After that, they managed to prove that, mathematically, these whirlpools are the same as mysterious black holes in space. Massive eddies are surrounded by super-tight barriers where fluid moves in closed loops. Even water can't get out from the inside of these loops. That's why tight ocean vortices play the role of enormous containers. Water inside them can be totally different from the ocean surrounding an eddy. And I'm not only talking about its temperature. The salt content inside and outside a whirlpool often differs as well. On the thin Curonian spit splitting the Baltic Sea from the Curonian Lagoon, there is one of the most bizarre places on Earth. Locals call this area the Dancing Forest because pine trees in this forest have shockingly unusual shapes. They twist in spirals and circles along the ground. There are some theories why it could be happening, of course. Some people claim that huge amounts of positive and negative energies once clashed in that spot. More down-to-earth individuals believe that the reason is geological. Sandy soil in the area is too unstable to hold trees growing upright. The most popular is the idea that strong winds blowing from the water influence the shape of the trees. In any case, experts haven't come to the final conclusion yet. Look at these underwater crop circles. For the first time, they were spotted in 1995, close to southern Japan's coast. Local divers called these 7 feet wide structures mystery circles. The enigma had been plaguing many minds for almost 16 years until the culprit was finally caught. Imagine the researchers' surprise when it turned out to be a male pufferfish. The fish needs a bit more than a week to build one circle, and the aesthetics are obviously crucial. A male is swimming inside the circle, digging valleys in the sand with its fins. But that's not all. The fish also use shells and corals to decorate particular parts of their circles. This whole build-a-circle thing has a practical purpose as well. The way a male fish swims pushes the sand toward the center of the circle and creates a mound which later serves as a nest. The next mystery on our list is in the Caribbean. Just off the coast of Belize, there's a giant sinkhole. That's the Great Blue Hole. It's about 1,000 feet across and more than 400 feet deep. Once, a long time ago, this hole was a cave. But then rising waters filled it, making it collapse in on itself. The deeper you'll descend into the Great Hole's crystalline waters, the darker it will become. You'll see tons of stalactite-filled caves there, but entering them is extremely dangerous, unless you want to get hopelessly lost. Once you reach a depth of 50 feet, you'll notice that the water is shimmering. That's the invisible line dividing the sinkhole's salty top from the freshwater abyss. You might want to turn back right now. Who knows what you might come across in the murky depths. There was an old Amazonian legend that told about the river that was so hot that it boiled. And it was believed to be just a legend until Peruvian geoscientist Andres Russo questioned if the river could be real. All experts denied such a possibility. After all, hot rivers do exist, but only in the areas where there are volcanoes. As for the part of the country mentioned in the legend, there are no volcanoes in that region. But Andres Russo was too dedicated to give up. And in 2011, he finally located the river from the legends. The water in it was indeed steaming hot. Its temperature was 186 degrees Fahrenheit, not boiling, but pretty close to this point. But what shocked the researcher the most was the size of the river. One could think that the almost boiling water was the result of the activity of an underwater hot spring. But thermal pools are always small, while the river is 20 feet deep and flows for almost 4 miles. This is the only river of its kind on our planet.
Floods, tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, yikes. All these natural disasters can get extremely dangerous, but we're kind of familiar with them. But how about a natural disaster that has never happened before, but could occur any moment now? It might be a super eruption. That's what happens when a super volcano erupts. You might know that Yellowstone Park is located on top of a supervolcano. The last massive eruption there happened about 664,000 years ago, and the one before that, approximately 1.3 million years ago. If we do the math, we'll understand that the next eruption might be due anytime soon. There's no strong evidence that the supervolcano is waking up or preparing for an eruption, but what would it be like if it did happen? Months before the eruption, small-scale earthquakes would become more frequent and more powerful in the area. Not long before the eruption, the growing pressure would push up the ground over the volcano, creating a dome. Narrow cracks would open along the edges of this dome. The magma would then start rising toward the surface, and then the eruption would kick off. A massive column of lava and ash would shoot up into the air to a height of over 16 miles. The volcano would keep pumping ash for days on end. The air in that area would heat up to 570 degrees Fahrenheit. For all living creatures, ash fallout would be one of the most dangerous consequences of the eruption. Buildings and trees would start collapsing under the weight of this dense substance. It would only take a couple of days for a 10-foot layer of ash to cover the territory of about 50 miles around the center of the eruption. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world would start to drop. The eruption would also be rich in sulfur, and this element is an effective sun blocker. That's why it would soon get so cold that there would be no summer in the whole world for the next several years. The monsoon seasons would change. It would be hard for animals to find food and clean water. Well now, how about a gamma ray burst? You don't stumble across this kind of radiation in your everyday life. A gamma ray burst occurs when two neutron stars collide. The collapse of a massive star can produce it too. Gamma rays could present a serious danger to Earth. If a gamma ray burst happened close to our home planet, it could rip our ozone layer away. After that, we would be left unprotected from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Plus, gamma rays could also produce ground ozone. This kind of ozone could seep into the ocean since it's water-soluble, and that would lead to a mass extinction of marine life. Plants wouldn't survive this disaster either. Now, come to think of it, giant sinkholes could swallow entire communities. One of such sinkholes opened up in the city of New York. It pulled a parked van into the earth. That happened in the summer of 2022. And it wasn't the only sinkhole to appear in that area. Local inhabitants reported about 4,000 sinkholes all over the city. This kind of problem is also very common in Florida, and it's much more serious than it may sound. Sinkholes open all of a sudden, pulling down everything and everyone that happens to be nearby. Sinkholes appear all over the world, which makes them a global problem. They're totally unpredictable and form without warning. Luckily, experts know what causes them. In some areas, there are vast areas of groundwater. But during droughts, this water dries up. This creates large empty caverns, and after heavy rains, the surface over such a cavern can collapse, creating a sinkhole within minutes. Now, what if we came across a wandering black hole? You might know that a black hole is a region in space where gravity is so powerful that not even light can escape its clutches. Luckily, the nearest one to us is 1,500 light-years away. Nothing to worry about, right? Until you find out about wandering black holes. Now, things get definitely way creepier. If such a black hole entered the solar system, Earth would be doomed. We wouldn't stand a chance against this space monster. In 2012, 13 wandering black holes were spotted not so far away from our planet. But worry not. Not far away, in space terms, means around 1 billion light-years away. So we've got some time left. Plus, the possibility of such a disaster is very, very low. Another natural disaster we haven't experienced yet is a mega flood. It's never happened before, but the changes in climate do make for a risky potential. It could start, let's say, in California. This state experienced some really bad flooding in the past. One of such floods stretched up to 60 miles across and 300 miles long. If a similar disaster happened these days, it would cause $1 trillion worth of damage. It would also uproot millions of people. Now let's talk about a hypercane. Judging from the name, this natural disaster might get extreme. A hypercane is a theoretical hurricane of unsurpassed power. It would occur if the ocean became overheated as a result of climate change, or because of a massive volcanic eruption. In any case, these conditions could create a hurricane that would stretch way beyond the lower stratosphere. And as you may guess, regular hurricanes don't do that. The hypercane speed would reach 500 miles per hour. The pressure inside would be low enough not to let the hypercane to wear out as quickly as other hurricanes. The hypercane could last for weeks on end. But the worst thing? It could damage or even destroy part of Earth's ozone layer, and the hole could be the size of the entire North American continent. Now, this disaster did happen before. About 66 million years ago. I bet you know what I'm hinting at. Yep, that very meteor that supposedly wiped out dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. This 7-mile-wide space visitor was traveling at 67,000 miles per hour. As a result of the collision, 75% of all life on the planet disappeared, and winter reigned on Earth for 18 months. Want to know a secret? Meteors strike Earth all the time. Even more of them barely miss our planet. But it's also very hard to predict meteor strikes. Scientists miss a lot of them until they just nearly miss us. That's why experts are working on an early warning system that could prevent disasters. It could make meteor impacts less catastrophic, or at least allow people time to evacuate. It could also be our very own sun that would be responsible for another natural disaster. I'm talking about a massive solar flare. On the scale of damage to society, few catastrophes can compare to this event. It wouldn't destroy buildings like a tsunami or an earthquake. Neither would it end lives in the same way a supervolcano or meteor would. But it would cripple our entire way of life by destroying the whole electronic infrastructure of Earth. The cost of this disaster would reach trillions of dollars. It'd cause other infrastructures to fail. Communication, medicine, transportation, banking systems. Those would tumble like dominoes, and it would be incredibly hard to recover them. Earth would be left without electricity for years. There would be no electric light, no computers, no phones. Water supply systems would be out of order. There would be no food in supermarkets. There would be no electricity, and people wouldn't be able to reboot the already broken power grids. In 1859, people all over the world woke up in the middle of the night. It was as light as during the day. The skies were illuminated with auroras, red, green, purple. They appeared even in the regions where no one had seen them before, like the Bahamas, Jamaica, or Hawaii. Telegraphs got electrically charged, even though they were disconnected. In many areas, fires started. That was when technology barely existed. But imagine the avalanche of problems a solar flare could cause today. Okay, it's pop quiz time. What's the strongest river in the world? The Amazon? Pfft, rookie guess. No, really. The mightiest river isn't on land at all. It's underwater, and it's called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, or ACC for friends. This beast flows with a force 100 times stronger than the Amazon River, and it could power over 100,000 hydroelectric plants. That's enough electricity to light up entire continents. But this underwater juggernaut doesn't just flex its muscles for fun. It's the planet's ultimate multitasker. The ACC is Earth's thermostat, carbon vacuum, climate stabilizer, and oceanic superhighway all rolled into one. But here's the not-so-fun part. Scientists have spotted a serious red flag. The ACC is slowing down. And not just by a little bit. We're talking up to 20% weaker by 2050. If this trend continues, we're looking at climate chaos that could make your worst Monday feel like a day at the spa. So, maybe time to panic a little? Well, hold on. So what is the ACC anyways? To learn more about it, we need to dive deep into the ocean, figuratively. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current is the only ocean current that flows all the way around the planet, hugging the cold continent of Antarctica like a belt of water. Unlike other currents that get tripped up by continents, the ACC has a clear racetrack, nothing but open ocean, so it flows uninterrupted through the Drake Passage between South America and Antarctica. It moves an astonishing 3.6 billion cubic feet of water per second. That's so much water we couldn't find anything to compare it to, sorry. The ACC is driven by ferocious westerly winds, moving eastward to connect the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans into one continuous supercurrent. It also plunges into abyssal depths, connecting shallow, intermediate, and deep waters into one giant, swirling blender of oceanic energy. Now, to put it simply, maybe too late for that, but I'll try, the ACC is the glue that is keeping all of our planet together. It plays a starring role in the thermohaline circulation, or global conveyor belt, if you don't want to sound lame. This is the system that redistributes heat, carbon, and nutrients around the globe. To make it all work, the ACC pushes nutrient-rich deep water to the surface in a process called upwelling, feeding plankton, krill, whales, and eventually sushi on your plate. That means if you love seafood or care about ocean food chains at all, you should really start paying attention. Without this nutrient cycling, marine life from the bottom to the top of the food web suffers. Now, here's the cool part. While it's busy playing waiter to the sea, the ACC is also doing our laundry. Well, sort of. It absorbs massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and stores it in the deep ocean, locking it away for centuries. Think of it like Earth's giant carbon vault, no password required. It also helps regulate the weather. Without the ACC pushing heat around the globe, Western Europe would be 50 degrees colder. That means Paris would feel like Siberia, and Londoners would have to trade their umbrellas for snowshoes. The current helps maintain the temperature balance between the hemispheres, stabilizing wind patterns, rainfall, and ocean temperatures around the world. Even hurricane patterns could change because warm ocean surfaces are a key ingredient for cyclone formation. Mess with the currents, and you might be dialing up stronger, weirder storms. So, why is it slowing down? Well, of course, the answer is humans. You know those ice caps that are melting? Well, in Antarctica, where our friend the ACC lives, there's so much ice that if all of it melted, the Earth would rise more than 200 feet. That's taller than Cinderella's castle. What's worse, 60% of all the fresh water in the world is frozen in that ice. While that much water melting is already terrifying, it's the freshness of the water that really messes things up. You see, the ACC relies on the Southern Ocean's cold, salty water to be dense and heavy, so it can sink, which helps power the current forward like a chain reaction. But when fresh water from melting glaciers pours into the ocean, it dilutes the saltiness. That makes the water less dense, so it stops sinking properly. Without that sink and flush mechanism, the ACC can't maintain its powerful flow. It's like trying to flush a toilet with no gravity. As this continues, fresh water flows north, altering the ocean's density structure and counteracting the effects of ocean warming, which normally would speed the current up. Instead, the ACC slows down. A weaker ACC means less upwelling, so fewer nutrients reach the surface. This could devastate Antarctic marine ecosystems, reducing biodiversity, collapsing fisheries, and threatening species like penguins, whales, and krill. It also opens the door in Antarctica to invasive species, like the southern bull kelp, which could throw entire food chains into chaos. Krill alone are the main food source for whales, seals, penguins, and fish. So when krill populations crash, the whole system begins to wobble like a house of cards in a hurricane. And then there's the feedback loop from hell. As the ACC weakens, more warm water can sneak southward, reaching Antarctica and melting the ice even faster. That melting will dump more fresh water into the ocean, which will weaken the current even more, which will melt more ice, and you get the idea. It's a vicious cycle. Worse still, warm waters underneath ice shelves can cause them to break apart from below, meaning the melting accelerates even when surface temperatures seem stable. Globally, the effects would ripple far and wide. Monsoons in India could become erratic, rainfall in the Amazon could drop, and agriculture from Africa to Asia could suffer. Sea levels along the east coast of North America could surge, and global weather patterns could spin into confusion. Even the Southern Ocean's ability to support commercial fisheries, like Chile's lucrative salmon industry, could decline as nutrients fail to reach the surface. And let's not forget, without a strong ACC, the ocean's ability to absorb carbon and excess heat plummets. That means that more CO2 and heat will stay in the atmosphere, making our lives even more miserable. It's like turning off Earth's air conditioner while cranking up the furnace, and burning down the pantry while you're at it. Of course, this isn't the first time things went south with the ocean currents. Before humans started heating up the planet, Earth went through a deep freeze called the Little Ice Age, and it wasn't just about colder winters. This icy chapter may have kicked off when ocean currents in the North Atlantic started acting weird. And it wasn't so long ago. This Little Ice Age had a peak in 1850, literally yesterday. Scientists believe that melting glaciers and massive exports of Arctic sea ice flooded the ocean with fresh water. That fresh water messed with the ocean's usual saltiness and density, weakening powerful systems like the AMOC, short for Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. That's a mouthful. It's another crucial piece of the global conveyor belt puzzle. As these currents slowed down, less warm water reached the north, sea ice spread farther, and temperatures dropped even more. And here's the spooky part. Records from seashells near Iceland show that this shift didn't happen all at once. It came in two waves, like the planet was struggling to stay stable before tipping into a colder world. And because the AMOC is also part of the crazy life support system of planet Earth, everything is connected. Both systems are influenced by temperature, salinity, and the sinking of cold water. When the ACC slows, it can alter the balance of deep water formation and mixing, potentially weakening the AMOC too. That's a domino effect you really don't want to see. In fact, some models suggest that if both the ACC and AMOC are pushed past their tipping points, the result could be centuries of unstable climate conditions, way beyond anything modern agriculture or infrastructure is built to handle. So, next time you're sipping a cold drink or enjoying sushi, maybe raise a toast to the mighty ACC. It's doing a lot more for you than you think, and it could really use a little appreciation and less ice melting, please. If you live in a hot spot for earthquakes, like I do, you may have had these familiar shaking feelings. The ground trembling underneath you, pictures rattling on the walls, your neighbor's dog yapping across the yard. An earthquake is basically tectonic plates moving and grinding against each other. Rub your hands together really fast right now. Things heating up? That's energy. When these plates' energy get released, you and your neighbor's dog feel it on land. Yes, we're all surfing on giant pieces of land floating on hot liquid rock. You're surfing right now while watching this video. Sometimes one slides under another, like reaching in between the couch cushions for that remote that slipped down there. If you're wearing long sleeves, they get rolled up on your arm like a snake shedding its skin. When plate tectonics do this, mountains form. But let's zoom out from your bedroom. Even further. Keep going. There. Earth, the third planet from the Sun, covered in mountains, canyons, and those familiar continents with oceans stretching between and all around them. But our planet used to have just one single supercontinent, Pangaea, where all the land masses were hugging each other and enjoying the sweet life surrounded by one massive superocean. Africa and Australia were neighbors. The Americas and Asia popped up for a howdy neighbor. But fast forward about 300 million years, and here we are. And there you are, hanging 10 on molten rock as the ground beneath you forms mountains, ridges, volcanoes, and earthquakes. Sounds hardcore, but you don't feel like you're moving, do you? You also don't feel like your body is going highway speeds when you ride in a car. That's physics, and it's a funny thing. Right now, the plate under you is only moving a couple of inches a year, up to 4 when things get super speedy. Per day, that comes to half the width of a strand of hair. So let's speed things up a bit, say 300 feet a day. And me too.
You're sitting in your room enjoying a delicious cup of hot cocoa, scrolling the feed and watching some videos. As you set the mug on the nightstand, you begin to feel dizzy, like the room is spinning. You check your drink and see the liquid inside is swaying like crazy. Uh-oh, now you're swaying. You manage to get up but can't keep your balance. Everything topples over like a tornado in the room. You duck underneath your bed and cover your head. There's a power outage, and now you can't see anything.
There are two things to keep in mind when it comes to earthquakes: magnitude and intensity. Magnitude is the size of the quake. It's just one constant number. Intensity is how much shaking it causes. That number can be different depending on where you're measuring from. The most powerful earthquake ever was in Chile in 1960. Its magnitude measured 9.5 on the Richter scale. Above 7 is considered severe. The quake caused tsunamis all the way to Japan, Hawaii, the Philippines, and even New Zealand. The damage cost millions of dollars in repairs.
In the dark, you can still feel the ground shaking below you. And since the crust cut across 300 feet today, the ground rips open. The landscape where you used to bike around is now sprouting deep earth rocks and minerals. The buildings all around begin to collapse, but luckily, you manage to sneak off and escape into an open space. There isn't any service on your phone either. The cell towers toppled over during the quake, but the ground is still shaking. And with the plates moving so fast, the Earth's interior begins to show its true colors. And that color is red, red for red hot. You can see the mantle at this point. The Earth, like an onion, is revealing its layers. With magma flowing right in front of you, you'd think you're in a disaster movie. Suddenly, you get a whiff of salty sea air, and now you're standing on the beach. But wait a minute, you don't live by the coast. If an earthquake's strength is measured by magnitude and intensity, this one's a doozy. It probably originated out in the ocean and stretched all the way inland where you are. It caused a tidal wave so big, the coast just came to your landlocked town. Waves of ocean water are gathering near the edges of the city. Farms and rivers are all gone with a single tidal wave. The land that was good for agriculture is no more. And as the ground below you keeps on cutting, it lets in some ocean water between the gaps. It collides with the magma that's rising. Steam shoots up from the ground, and the Earth looks like a giant tea kettle. With the power out and no cell signals, there's no way of communicating with anyone. And that's just the thing with earthquakes. They can show up with hardly any warning.
Unlike earthquakes, tornadoes, and typhoons, with those, we can predict their path and intensity. We can prepare. Even volcanic eruptions give people enough time to evacuate and reach safe ground. But earthquakes are just in a league of their own.
And with all the buildings collapsing around you, you'd be seeing a smokescreen of dust and debris. The air would be unbreathable. Better grab a gas mask. Off in the distance are the mountains you've always enjoyed. You trekked along the trails every other weekend and had some fantastic camping trips along the river. But the earthquake drags across the center of the mountain and creates enough pressure to cut it. Trees start falling over. The mountain becomes a pile of rock and dust. It's not over yet. The shaking ground makes large pieces of land and rock slide down and head towards the town. Some landslides are so massive, they're enough to wipe out entire villages in remote areas. Many come after heavy rain, others come completely unexpected. With the ground opening beneath you, many of the objects on land get swallowed into the pit. Cars, trees, buildings, statues, you name it. You're able to find safe ground, but you can't really know if it's all that safe. All this is happening in your town and places across the globe. But it's about to get even more global.
Plate tectonics are crucial for life on Earth. One of their main duties in a thankless job was maintaining the planet's comfortable, livable temperature. Without landmasses floating around on a layer of liquid rock, there'd be no life on the liveliest planet we know so far. A couple of billion years ago, Earth was just a little ice ball. This was because the sun, much younger back then, was colder than it is today. You'd think the oceans would be frozen and good enough to skate from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but they weren't. And it's all because scientists believe the shifting plates underneath kept the oceans warm and cozy. They did that by creating underwater volcanoes. Besides lava and many gases, they spewed carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which trapped the heat on Earth. As the sun gradually got hotter, rainfall was able to drag the carbon dioxide back to the ground and into the mantle. And this cycle was able to help the Earth maintain its temperature to host us. Gee, how thoughtful. Earth is so unique because of these plate tectonics. No other planet in the solar system can brag of the same, except for Jupiter's frozen moon Europa. It's shown evidence of moving plate tectonics within the core. And even though Venus and Mars have hot interiors, there hasn't been any sign of such activity.
As the ground continues to cut across the land, everything inside has now descended underground. If the plates were to move 300 feet a day for a year, the entire planet's landscape would go through a total makeover. A bad one. Life as we know would cease to exist, except for maybe microscopic bacteria and a few insects that can survive such harsh conditions. The polar ice caps wouldn't hold any more ice, and volcanoes would continuously be erupting. The planet would just end up looking like a hot fireball of destruction, and maybe even burn up entirely.
Luckily, this is purely a hypothetical thought experiment. So, sit back, relax, and don't worry about the ground moving under your feet. It's taking its sweet time at a safe pace.
Woohoo!
If all the volcanoes on Earth suddenly erupted together, it'd be loud. We'd also have around 1,500 of these formations bursting at once. Now normally it's just 10 to 20 volcanoes that are active each day. But what would the world look like if they all blew their tops simultaneously? Geologists think it wouldn't be pretty. Even if only the land volcanoes erupted together, it would set off a chain reaction way worse than anything we've ever seen before. The two big problems would be ash and volcanic gases. While the explosions in lava would be damaging for people nearby, the real danger lies in what happens next. A thick layer of ash would cover the planet, blocking out sunlight completely. No sunlight means no photosynthesis, which means crops would fade away and temperatures would drop considerably. And all this ash cloud could remain in our atmosphere for up to 10 years. Now, ash aside, there's also acid rain to worry about. Volcanic gases like hydrochloric acid and sulfur dioxide would mix with the atmosphere and fall back down as acid rain. This type of weather would harm the groundwater and ocean surfaces. Even if humans would find a way to survive up to this point, we'd have no corals and no other sea creatures around. Scientists have seen similar events in Earth's history at a smaller scale. Big volcanic eruptions have been linked to mass extinctions. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in 1991, it cooled parts of the world for 2 years. But the extra carbon dioxide from these eruptions could also heat the planet, the same way we turn our stoves to broil for that extra crispy layer on our casserole. Geologists also mentioned that there's evidence in our atmosphere that stuff like this may have happened in the distant past. During the Cretaceous period, carbon dioxide levels were way higher than today, which made it difficult for marine life to thrive. Who would survive all this? Probably just some extremophiles, these organisms that survive in harsh conditions like hot springs or deep undersea vents. As for humans, we could all lay low in underground bunkers until things clear up, or build multiple space stations that could fit us all. Yeah, right. The chances of all volcanoes erupting at once, though, are very slim. Whew! That's because there isn't one giant source supplying all the volcanoes on Earth. Each one of these openings has its own deposit of magma, except for a few cases where they indeed share the supply. For example, in 1912, Nova Rupta in Alaska erupted alongside another volcano sharing magma. Scientists have also found evidence of magma hiding under volcanic areas, like under the Taupau volcanic zone in New Zealand. This magma can spread out horizontally for long distances, but is still just a local feature. Even if we consider all the magma under Taupau as one system, it's not connected to other volcanic areas like Indonesia or the Philippines. Because the great majority are isolated, volcanoes can't sync up to erupt at once. The magma comes from different processes like mantle decompression or adding water to the mantle through subduction. There's no way to make all these different volcanoes erupt together because of how tectonics work. Now, that doesn't mean we won't see interesting volcano activity in the future. Take an underwater area near British Columbia, where recently about 200 small earthquakes per hour have been noted. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, off the coast of Vancouver Island, magma is set to erupt, heating the water so much that it'll bubble like soda. However, this event will likely go unnoticed by anyone other than scientists. The anticipated eruption will most likely happen around 3 miles below the ocean surface. Scientists explain that the earthquakes range from negative to 4.1 magnitude, meaning only those nearby would feel any tremors. This unusual activity gives us a rare opportunity to study how the Earth's crust forms. The magma beneath the ocean floor is estimated to be almost 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, but will cool rapidly upon eruption and contact with water. This runny rock will solidify upon contact with the seafloor, turning black quickly. This event will be useful for biologists too, who will have the opportunity to study the marine animal's response to any changes, like run! Antarctica, often seen as a vast icy continent, also holds a volcanic surprise beneath its frozen surface. Researchers have identified over 130 under the western ice sheet alone, making it the largest volcanic region on Earth. Most of these volcanoes, about 90, were only recently discovered in 2017. But could any of these Antarctic volcanoes actually erupt? Well, it depends on which volcano we're talking about. While these formations are relatively young in geologic terms, it's hard for scientists to tell if they're still active or not. There are only 2 confirmed active volcanoes in Antarctica, Deception Island and Mount Erebus. The latter, standing tall as the highest peak on the continent, has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It's known for emitting gas and steam, and sometimes even throwing out rocks in what are called strombolian eruptions. One of its most notable features is a persistent lava lake in its crater, a rare phenomenon due to specific conditions needed to keep the surface molten. For instance, it's fueled by a steady supply of magma from deep within the Earth's mantle. This continuous inflow of molten rock provides the material for the lava lake to exist. It also features low ambient temperatures. Despite its location in Antarctica, Erebus has relatively mild temperatures in its summit region because of the heat generated by the volcanic activity. This allows the lava lake to remain liquid rather than freezing over. Deception Island, another active volcano, last erupted in the 70s. While it's currently not showing signs of imminent eruption, it's being monitored closely for any concerning activity. Apart from these 2 being confirmed to be active, Antarctica is dotted with fumaroles, openings in the Earth's crust that release gases and vapors. Sometimes these fumaroles can create icy towers reaching heights of 10 feet. What we should focus on is maybe supervolcanoes. They're this type that has the potential to produce the most massive and destructive eruptions. Unlike the typical one, which has a single vent, supervolcanoes have a vast magma chamber beneath the surface, spanning tens or even hundreds of miles in diameter. Their eruptions can have catastrophic effects on the surrounding area and even impact global climate patterns because of the amounts of ash and gases they spill out into the atmosphere. One famous supervolcano is the Yellowstone one, which some say is gearing up for another eruption. It has the capacity to unleash a colossal eruption, spewing over 240 cubic miles of material. As much as we'd like to predict its behavior, volcanoes don't stick to a calendar. On the contrary, Eruptions simply happen when there's enough magma beneath the surface. There also needs to be enough pressure for the magma to travel upwards. As far as we can measure, these conditions are not currently met at Yellowstone. Sure, many volcanoes operate on a cyclical pattern, but that doesn't mean Yellowstone is overdue. In fact, Yellowstone has had just 3 major eruptions over the past 2.1 million years. Also, the term supervolcano refers to the formation's size, not necessarily how fussy it is. Yellowstone's monitoring is extensive, tracking seismicity, ground deformation, thermal emissions, gas, water chemistry, and surface changes. Signs of an eruption would include thousands of earthquakes over a short period. We'd also see deformation on the ground and weird gas emissions ahead of time. Stable, as it might look like for now, the consequences of it having a major eruption could look ugly. Ash dispersion could blanket a 500-mile radius, potentially disrupting Midwest agriculture and clogging waterways. Ash and gas emissions into the stratosphere could induce global climatic effects, making our planet colder for several years. And yes, we've seen some research that it shows there's more liquid molten rock under the Yellowstone volcano than scientists believe. But that doesn't translate to imminent danger. Okay, watch your step now. Millions of gallons of hot magma are gathering in one flow and rising thousands of miles to the surface of our planet. A massive fracture in a tectonic plate shakes the ground and fills the air with a loud hum. Fire, gases, lava erupt from the dark, unexplored depths of Earth's crust. A planetary-scale catastrophe has just happened, and no one's noticed it. Now imagine you're having fun on a luxury yacht somewhere in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, drinking cocktails and sunbathing. At this moment, one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in the planet's history is happening right below you. But you don't feel anything. You don't even drop your glass. Yeah, you can hear a strange sound coming from the ocean depths. You see foaming water and pieces of pumice floating up to the surface. But it doesn't bother you much. So how did it happen that we missed such a powerful eruption in 2012? Why did scientists find out about it only a few years later? The answer is simple: water. An eruption of an ordinary volcano is a huge disaster. There are incandescent liquid metals and molten rock containing almost the entire periodic table inside our planet. All of this soup is called magma, and it's constantly boiling inside the subsoil of our world. This hot substance is lighter than the surrounding crust, so it always rises. Fortunately, the planet's surface is strong enough and doesn't allow magma to splash out. But sometimes this protection fails. The upper part of Earth is covered with connected parts, tectonic plates. These plates collide with each other and then move apart. Imagine a big moving mosaic puzzle where all its parts are tectonic plates. And when a small part of this puzzle gets separated from another, magma immediately comes up. These unstable fault sites with leaking magma are called volcanoes. And when they erupt, it gets hot. Lava flows out of the vent and burns all the vegetation around. This is accompanied by earthquakes and thick black smoke. If a volcano spits out magma too high, it falls back to the surface in the form of fire rain. But the worst thing here is ash. It's not that ash that's left in your grill after a good barbecue, no. Volcanic ash consists of solid particles harmful to any organism. These particles are not burnt wood, but various chemical elements. Volcanic ash is sharp, dense, and tangible. It can block sunlight, cover and destroy all plants, settle in your lungs. If you get too close to an erupting volcano, well, you better have a fireproof suit, oxygen tanks, a gas mask, and an underground shelter. Then you might survive, but there's no guarantee. At the same time, if an eruption occurs underwater, you don't need to worry about it. Of course, if you're not a marine biologist studying coral reefs nearby, or if you don't travel past that area in a submarine. In that case, boy, you're in trouble. When an underwater volcano erupts, this shakes a colossal area, heats the water, destroys the seabed. But almost nothing happens at the surface. The enormous pressure of millions of gallons of water suppresses the destructive power of the volcano. Molten rocks shooting out of Earth's crust get pressed against the seabed. Yeah, a submarine swimming by would be thrown off course and might collide with solidified lava. Unfortunately, no such cases have ever been recorded, but it can easily become a reality because underwater eruptions happen pretty often. More than 70% of all volcanic activity occurs underwater, and almost no one notices it. In most cases, these volcanoes immediately fall asleep after they erupt and never wake up again. But in 2012, something happened, and scientists couldn't ignore it. Big pieces of pumice, the size of a van, began floating up in the southeastern Pacific Ocean. These rocks covered about 154 square miles. There were thousands of them. They looked like a group of unknown floating mini-islands. Volcanic stones were scattered in the ocean over the area twice as large as New Zealand. Scientists determined the full scale of the disaster with the help of deep-sea sonar devices. They studied the seabed at a depth of 4,000 feet for a long time and found 14 craters from which magma had flowed during the eruption. The seabed was covered with frozen lava flows and tons of ash. The researchers found that more than a third of the erupted volcanic material surfaced and was scattered all over the place. The rest remained at the bottom. This wiped out all marine life in the area. It seemed that this eruption was one of the largest in the entire history of observations. But in 2019, researchers discovered something even more significant. That was an underwater volcano 3 times higher than the Eiffel Tower. According to scientists' calculations, it ejected between 30 and 1,000 times more molten rock than the previous volcano. This monster had been feeding from the world's deepest magma reservoir we know about. Seismic activity here was so devastating that it destroyed everything around. Fortunately, not for long. After any eruption, life reappears like a phoenix rises from the ashes. And it's not just a figure of speech. Volcanic ash and lava around the volcano contain many useful mineral elements. All of them nourish the soil and help microorganisms develop on land and in the water. For this reason, there's usually so much vegetation, flowers, and trees around volcanoes. And underwater volcanoes can eventually form islands. This is a long process that ends with the appearance of a massive piece of land above the water surface. To understand how this happens, you need to go back millions of years. So, let's go. See this underwater volcano? There are sea dinosaurs, giant sharks, and ancient fish swimming around. Now, the seabed starts shaking. The volcano releases tons of magma and ash. The water pressure immediately pushes all this stuff back to the bottom. The eruption can continue for a long time. The released magma raises the seabed. After hundreds, maybe 1,000 years, a new eruption begins. New magma flows create a new layer above the previous one. Over millions of years, layer by layer, the volcano is growing. It's slowly rising, thanks to constant eruptions. Of course, with time, some volcanoes go dormant, but this one continues to erupt. And then, one day, the volcanic rock reaches the surface and an island emerges. After many more years, the volcano can fall asleep. After this, life is likely to appear on the island. Grass, flowers, trees, animals. The area that was once ruined seabed is swarming with life now. Volcanic islands have unique ecosystems because they develop separately from all the continents. Observing such islands helps scientists understand how life on Earth evolves. New species of birds, animals, insects can live on these chunks of land. Hundreds of islands around the world appeared thanks to eruptions of underwater volcanoes. You can find them in Hawaii, Indonesia, Iceland. Many of them are inhabited by people who build villages and towns there. There were cases when a volcano erupted when people literally lived on top of it. That's what happened on the small island of Aogashima, located to the south of Tokyo. People built a beautiful town right in the crater of an active volcano. And in May 1785, an eruption began. Nobody expected this to happen. At some point, thousands of birds rose in the air and flew away from the island. Then the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound shook the air. Thick smoke appeared above the top of the green volcano. The crater started spitting dirt, huge rocks, and red-hot pieces of magma into the sky. The disaster lasted several weeks. People somehow managed to evacuate. Then, finally, the volcano calmed down. After that, a long process of recovery started. The inhabitants of the town rebuilt houses, roads, infrastructure. More than 200 years have passed since that moment, and during this time, the volcano never woke up. And despite the risk of a new eruption, people continue living there. The population is growing. Many people from other cities and countries come to live there. The main reason everyone loves this place is that it looks like a paradise. Nobody wants to leave the island. There are thermal springs where you can bathe, dense jungle with many beautiful animals and trees. The soil is rich, and you can grow tasty fruit and vegetables there. The water near the coast is swarming with fish. Every day, you can enjoy the incredible landscapes of the island. Seismological services constantly monitor the situation and watch the volcano's activity, listening for a rumble that may someday come again. It's 9:59 a.m. when a man is jolted awake in his bed by a powerful, mysterious force. While he's trying to figure out what's going on, a giant 100-foot-tall column of water is already surging toward his hometown. In 20 minutes, most of his friends and family members will lose their lives when a sky-high wall of water sweeps away buildings, trees, and cars. And it can happen to you at any given time. It's the day after Christmas in 2004. Thousands of tourists from Europe and America are enjoying tropical beaches in Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia when a powerful undersea earthquake strikes off the western coast of northern Sumatra, Indonesia. It's a 9.3 magnitude earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in Asia. It triggers one of the largest tsunamis in history, the Boxing Day tsunami, which will take the lives of 230,000 people within a few hours. The city of Banda Aceh in Sumatra, Indonesia, home to 260,000 people, is the closest to the earthquake's epicenter. In less than half an hour after the quake, huge 10-story tall waves crash into the city. More than 60,000 people lose their lives immediately. The destruction is so severe that almost no one in its path survives. Next, the tsunami hits Thailand. The waves, rushing at a mind-boggling 500 miles per hour across the Indian Ocean, reach the shores of Phang Nang and Phuket about 90 minutes later. Despite such a significant time gap, both locals and tourists are caught totally off guard. Many beachgoers even walk out onto the beach, curious about the strangely receding sea, only to be overtaken by a towering wall of water. Nearly 5,400 people, including 2,000 foreign tourists, won't survive that day in Thailand. An hour after Thailand, the tsunami hits southeastern India near Chennai. Debris-filled waves push miles inland, taking the lives of more than 10,000 people. Sri Lanka faces even worse devastation. The island will lose over 30,000 people, and hundreds of thousands will become homeless. The tsunami's incredible strength is evident even far away. 8 hours later, it claims its last victims in South Africa, 5,000 miles from the quake's epicenter. There, rogue waves catch swimmers off guard. Researchers from NOAA's Center for Tsunami Research explain that the destruction was due to the sheer power of the earthquake. It originated from a megathrust fault. That's where heavy ocean plates dive beneath lighter continental plates. These faults are the largest in the world and lie underwater. The 2004 earthquake ruptured a 900-mile stretch of the Indian and Australian plates, 31 miles beneath the seafloor. Plus, instead of one quick jolt, the quake lasted for 10 minutes and released an unimaginable amount of energy. During the shaking, massive sections of the seafloor moved upwards by 130 feet. That's a lot. Such a sudden movement set colossal waves rippling across the ocean. Imagine it like dropping a massive pebble into the water. The thing is, tsunami waves aren't like those surfing waves you may imagine. No, they look like a fast-moving whitewater river that floods everything in its way. If you get caught in those raging waters, it's almost impossible to survive. If the powerful currents don't pull you under, floating debris will. That's the reason why, during earthquakes, there are usually many injuries and fewer lives lost. With tsunamis, it's the opposite. There's way fewer injuries than fatalities because it's too hard to survive. Catastrophic tsunamis like the one in 2004 are rare. That's why India and Sri Lanka had no record of such disasters. This lack of experience, combined with the absence of warning systems, made the consequences of the disaster even more tragic. People didn't feel the earthquake because they were far from the epicenter. And with no natural warning signs, no official alerts, and no history of tsunamis, the waves that hit crowded coastlines had devastating effects. By the way, the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean on Earth, is where most earthquakes and tsunamis occur. Locally damaging tsunamis strike somewhere in this ocean about once every 1 to 2 years. 76% of the recorded fatal tsunamis happened in the Pacific, and 99% of tsunami casualties are caused by local or regional tsunamis, which occur more often and hit quickly. But then a question arises: could a tsunami as devastating as the Boxing Day one happen again? Unfortunately, the answer isn't very straightforward. A warning system has indeed been established in the Indian Ocean. Its goal is to alert coastal nations of potential tsunamis. But human behavior is still a critical challenge. This became clear during a real-life test in 2012. That's when many residents of Banda Aceh, Indonesia, simply ignored evacuation towers after a tsunami warning. People never seem to learn, huh? The Indian Ocean Warning Network uses undersea pressure sensors placed near tectonic plate fault lines. These sensors detect any changes and transmit data to surface buoys, which then send it via satellite to control centers on land. Authorities analyze the information and decide whether to issue warnings and evacuate at-risk areas. Aceh, located on one of the world's most active fault lines, implemented additional safeguards. They installed sirens in coastal cities, and people get alerts on their cell phones. Plus, there are evacuation towers, reinforced concrete structures capable of holding 500 people. They are special safe zones. Authorities did test how well prepared people were. In 2009, 18 Indian Ocean countries participated in an evacuation drill, simulating a large earthquake. Thousands of coastal communities took part in this drill, and officials concluded that the exercise had been a success. Fast forward to the system's first real test in April 2012. An 8.6 magnitude undersea earthquake west of Aceh triggered tsunami warnings. And even though there were no significant waves, the whole situation revealed critical flaws. Many residents ignored evacuation towers, choosing instead to flee by car or motorbike. This led to citywide traffic jams, with people getting stranded in areas vulnerable to a potential tsunami. It was chaos. Some residents even went back to the beach to look for the signs of a tsunami, which is a life-threatening mistake. So apparently, there is still a lot of work to do when it comes to tsunami survival. But what you need to know by heart is the signs of an impending tsunami. First of all, it's severe ground shaking. Strong earthquakes near coastal areas can generate tsunamis. If you notice that water on the beach starts to recede at an alarming rate, exposing the ocean floor, reefs, and stranded fish, run. Then there might be unusual ocean sounds. Keep in mind that a loud roaring noise, resembling a train or jet engine, may accompany an approaching tsunami. If you notice any of these warning signs, do not wait for official evacuation orders. Leave low-lying coastal areas immediately and move to higher ground as fast as possible. If you're at home, make sure your family members know about the tsunami and follow official guidance. You should remember that locally generated tsunamis may strike within minutes. You have to act quickly. If it's a distant tsunami, you may have more time to evacuate. If you don't have an opportunity to move inland, hide in high reinforced concrete buildings. Avoid staying in small buildings or homes in low-lying areas. If you're on a boat, stay offshore. Tsunami activity isn't as dangerous in deep water, so avoid returning to port during a tsunami warning. If you're already in port, check with harbor authorities for guidance. If it's possible to move to deep water, do it in an orderly manner. It may be safer for small boat owners to leave their vessel and move to higher ground. And always, prioritize moving to higher ground over saving your belongings. If you live in a coastal area, you can take some measures to protect your property in advance. Since most tsunami waves are under 10 feet, you may consider elevating your house. It can reduce damage. You can also consult an engineer to assess and reinforce your home. And finally, don't forget to protect outbuildings too, and create fences that will allow animals to reach higher ground.